Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related YouTube channel in the world, the John Campea YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and this is Open Mic. What is Open Mic? Well, I'm glad that you asked. You see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which we do live, we take the second half of the show to take your live questions. However, you know, here on the weekends, that's all we like to do is just take your questions, and that's what we are here to do today. And my apologies, this open mic was supposed to be yesterday. For those of you who didn't know, this was supposed to be yesterday, and what happened was Ann and I went out to Corona to see her mom. And while out there, we took our dog, one of our dogs, Lily, to the vet. And the vet said, okay, great, you can pick up Lily like around noon. Great, that was going to give me plenty of time to pick up our dog Lily from the vet and then come home and do open mic yesterday. But then what happened was they found some extra things and they needed to keep her longer, and we didn't end up weren't able to go and pick her up until about 6. Now she's okay, which is great, but again, they had to look into some things. So anyway, she's fine, but that meant I had to push the show till today. So my apologies to any of you guys who were waiting around for the show yesterday. I did try to put out a notification that we were pushing it off till today. So my eternal gratitude for your patience and indulgence, guys, as I had to take care of my dog. Anyway, so with that down, guys, let's get over and start taking your live questions on this weekend. And I trust you guys are having a great start to your weekend. May it be relaxing, enjoyable, have a little bit of fun. I hope you guys are doing well, whichever way you're doing it, because you're doing the four main things: staying smart, staying safe, taking care of yourselves, and taking care of the people around you. And if we all do that, we're all going to be just fine. All right, with that down, let's move into our main topics. Let's get into our conversations that you guys have started off here today. And we're going to start things off with Zavery Zavala, who writes, ever seen A Cure for Wellness? I have. My buddy and I saw it a while ago, and we got such an uncomfortable / depressing vibe. I've never come so close to wanting to leave the theater, though it had interesting elements and proved Dane DeHaan can be great. Well, Dane DeHaan has proved in just about everything he's in that he can be great. Even when he's in things that aren't so good, Dane DeHaan can be great. Cure for Wellness for me always had like a Shutter Island, Scorsese's Shutter Island kind of a feel to it. Like, that's why I was intrigued at first. Plus, I like Gore Verbinski as a director, and Jason Isaac is also in that show, who was just in Star Trek Discovery, and of course he was Malfoy's dad in the Harry Potter series. I really like Isaac as well. But it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just never clicked for me. The premise was interesting. I dug that it kind of had a Shutter Island kind of feel to it. But by the end of it, it was just like more eerie than coherent. I don't know, like eeriness, creepiness, wonder, like suspense, all those are good tools. But at the heart of it, regardless of what kind of movie you have to have a really just solid narrative. And I find at least in Cure for Wellness, sometimes the narrative itself was sacrificed for the cause of the screen atmosphere they wanted to have. I don't know if that's making a lot of sense, but if you saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So I see where you're coming from on that, Avery. All right, next one up. Let's see. Patrick writes, 1 of 4. John, the reason we are saying you can skip episodes 1 through 8 of Clone Wars is because the season is split into 3-4 episode story arcs. Other than the last 5 minutes of episode 8, where Ahsoka finds out that Maul is on Mandalore, there is no direct important connections to the final arc, episodes 9 through 12. This final arc is not your typical Clone Wars, not at all. It's a significant setup. It's not great Clone Wars, it's fantastic Star Wars. I've heard other people say that about other Clone Wars stuff too, and it doesn't work for me. It's fantastic Star Wars. The animation, the storytelling, the music that sets the mood, the dialogue, emotions, it's amazing. I and others are trying to get you to watch this arc. I'm not going to, because we honestly think that as a huge Star Wars fan, you're missing out on fantastic Star Wars that gives more context and more weight to Revenge of the Sith, and is executed beautifully and smartly, even if you know what's about to happen and who survives the events. The arc concludes on May 4th, and as far as I heard, I could be wrong, they still stitch this arc together as a film after the series is done. Now, I appreciate that very much, and I love that there are those of you watching that series that are really enjoying this last part. I mean, it's funny because I've heard from a lot of people who even have liked the other previous 6 seasons of Clone Wars that they have not been fans of episodes 1 through 8. And I did watch episode 1 of this season, and it's just like, nah, it's still not for me. The thing is, Patrick, listen, you're just going to have to accept that not everything is for everybody, right? There's things that I love that there are going to be people I know that they don't like it. You know, I know people who don't like Star Wars, the original trilogy. That's crazy to me, but I accept that. They don't like the original trilogy. That's fine. That's the way it is. I went through 6 seasons of Clone Wars. It's not for me. And that's okay. It's okay that it's not for me. And the thing is, I've heard other people say to me the exact same thing you just did about the previous 6 seasons of Star Wars. That's this, not this, and it's this. And it's like, okay, great, but I watched it and it didn't work for me. So, and that's great. I love that other people are watching it, and I love that other people are enjoying it. It's always great when Star Wars fandom can have films that they enjoy. I don't like the prequels, but I love that there are people who do like the prequels. That's great. Whatever brought you into the Star Wars fandom, let that bring you into the Star Wars fandom. That's awesome. Still not for me. I don't like them, but hey, you do, and that's awesome. So no, I like, no matter how much you like something, Patrick, I gave it 6 years and it just never worked for me. And it is what it is. Like, I still really prefer Filoni's work on Rebels. I thought Rebels was better. Now, I know other people think the opposite, and that's cool too, but yeah, I'm not going to magically suddenly start liking this series. Like, other people have told me, oh, but John, this storyline in the original 6 seasons. It's like, no, I saw it and I just didn't like it. So, but hey, that's the beautiful thing about stories on the screen and Star Wars in particular, is that there are different things that will appeal to different people. And if you like it, that's awesome. I celebrate that. All right. Russell Amador writes, no Darth Vader voice in regards to the delay of John Wick 4. I get it, though. It was bound to happen to either The Matrix or Baba Yaga, but a year delay, that was a gut punch. In other news, hopefully Tenet is still opens in July, and it very well may. Here's my one thought, though, Russell, about John Wick 4. Keanu Reeves is made some kind of deal with the devil at a crossroads at some point that he did not age between the ages of 29 and like 46. How old? Hold on a second. How old is he now? Hold on a second. How old is Reeves' age? How old is he now? Okay, he's 55. So Keanu Reeves made a deal with the devil at some point that my face will not age a day between the ages of like 28 and 52 years old, right? And he didn't. It was crazy. You'd see pictures of Keanu Reeves at age 50, and he looks like a picture of him that was taken when he was 30 years old was taken 2 weeks ago, right? Here's the one thing I do hope they do, though, because he's finally, Keanu Reeves doesn't look like he's in his 30s anymore. It's about damn time. Anyway, with the John Wick films, they've been doing it like it just literally happens the next moment, right? John Wick 1 ends, John Wick 2 picks up pretty close right after that. John Wick 2 ends, John Wick 3 picks up right at the end of John Wick 2. So basically we're saying that only a few days have transpired over the years since we've had John Wick 1. Matt Reeves, Keanu Reeves. There's only so many Reeves. I'll get there at some point. Keanu Reeves does not look the same age now that he did when he did John Wick 1. Because look at that. He's actually a human being. He's finally starting to age a little bit. But he does not look the same now. And so my one hope is that when they do John Wick 4, that they at least say there's some passage of time. Like from the end of the events of John Wick 3 when he goes off that roof, that when we start John Wick 4, that it says 2 years later, or something to explain that he looks a little bit differently than he supposedly did 3 days ago at the beginning of John Wick 1. You know what I mean? But I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the wait. Look, John Wick 3 was actually my favorite in the franchise. I freaking love that movie. That movie's so good, and I cannot wait for 4. But if we need to wait a little bit longer, I'm okay. Look, I have no problem saying too, I am far more excited. I am far more excited for John Wick 4 than I am for Matrix 4. Far more excited for John Wick 4 than Matrix 4. And for good reason. Like after Matrix 1, the Matrix film went on a significant decline in quality, and I didn't like any of the other movies that the Wachowskis did after that. So I don't have a lot of reason to be excited for Matrix 4. I'm open to having my mind change when we see trailers and stuff like that. Fingers crossed. But right now I am far more interested in John Wick 4, and I kind of wish it was Matrix 4 that got bumped instead, but it's still okay. It's still okay. We're going to get the movie, and it's going to be awesome, and it'll be well worth the wait. All right, next up, Armando Martinez writes, better casting, Dune or Batman? You know what? They're both great. They're both great, but I actually got to go with Batman. Now, as far as lead goes, you know I'm very, very big on, not Andy Serkis, Robert Pattinson. I'm very big on Robert Pattinson playing Batman because he's proved over the past 6, 7, 8 years he's an incredible talent. But Timothée Chalamet, I believe, might be the next Daniel Day-Lewis. So in leads, you give the edge to Dune with Timothée Chalamet. But once you move beyond the leads, there's some very, very good casting in Dune, don't get me wrong. But when you're in the Batman, you're talking about like Colin Farrell, who I believe is one of the most underrated, top tier, elite level actors in the business today. I believe he's tragically overlooked for how absolutely solid he is as an actor. I think he's one of the best out there. He's incredible. You got Paul Dano, who, if it wasn't for the fact that he was in the same movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and There Would Be Blood, and everybody paid attention to Daniel Day-Lewis, understandably so, Paul Dano could have won an Academy Award for that movie. He's such a good actor. Then you can put Jeffrey Wright in there, who's just insanely good. Like, I love Jeffrey Wright. The casting on the new Batman has been inspired. The casting in Dune is very, very solid, but I'm going to go better casting in Batman right now. I'm going to go better casting in Batman. All right, next one. Jojo Giraffe writes, which entity name is worse? Spunk, that, for those of you who don't know, that is the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. That is what they're actually calling it, and it's really actually that stupid. Or Peacock. I just think they're both hilarious and worth a chuckle. Look, I think Peacock is a damn dumbass name for NBC Universal's network. But John, their logo is in the shape of a peacock. Oh, that's a good reason why you name it Peacock? It's idiotic. But Peacock is an inspired name compared to Spunk. So I'm going to go Jojo. For me, I mean, there could be good eternal debates throughout the centuries of philosophers and scientists throughout the years debating this. But for me, I'm going to say the worst one is Spunk. I think Peacock's a better name than Spunk. But that's just me. All right, 50 Shades of Geek writes, to me, the big question regarding Disney's Hercules remake is, will they pull a Mufasa and bring back the Danny DeVito character? Hey, Hercules, I can offer you a nice egg in these trying times. I think the question isn't whether or not they'll bring back the character. The question is whether or not they'll bring back Danny DeVito. I mean, I've heard people already talking about they should bring back James Woods. Because, I mean, look, hey, it doesn't matter that James Woods is older. He's going to be mostly CGI anyway, right? So get back to... And to me, I think bringing back James Earl Jones as Mufasa is the one exception I would make. Now, don't get me wrong. I won't be against it if they bring back James Woods, and I won't be against it if they bring in Danny DeVito. I won't be against any of that. Do I feel like they should or need to? No, not really. Neither of those characters are of the iconic, legendary status of James Earl Jones as Mufasa. So if they do it, perfectly fine. Do I think they should? Nah, actually, I think they should probably not do that. But hey, that's just me. Let's see what happens. All right, 50 Shades of Geek also writes, me watching the John Campea Show on the replay skips the 4-minute break. John, thank you so much for your patience and indulgence. That is my typical return greetings. Yeah, it really is. Every single day. All right, K Major writes, I can hear it now, John. The babies. Wah! He can't be Hercules. He's not Greek. Wah! He can't be Zeus. He doesn't have lightning coming out of his hands. Grow up, people. I honestly don't think you're going to hear as much of that. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll pull something wild and they'll get a Greek actor. Like, hey, listen, isn't Zac Efron? You know, a lot of people have been bringing up Zac Efron as maybe a possible Hercules. And everybody knows I like Zac Efron very much. I think he's a really good actor, but I just don't think he's got the physical stature, even though he's like ripped like a bodybuilder. He's smaller. And I just see Hercules as being like 6'3", something like that. Not that that's the most important thing, but if I'm not wrong, does Zac Efron not have a little Greek in his ancestry? I could be wrong about that. I thought he had Greek in his DNA. But anyway, I could be wrong. So that could just add more more kindling to the fire of get Zac Efron as Hercules. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But honestly, I don't think it's going to be as big. I don't think many people are going to make that big of an issue out of it, whether they get a Greek actor or not. I'm sure there will be some people, but I don't know that it's going to be a major thing. All right, K Major writes, don't know about you, but I get tired of folks turning any movie that has music in it into a music competition. This ain't American Idol. We need actors. I get the appeal to hear an artist you like sing, but if they can't act, the movie's going to be trash. I agree. First and foremost, this is a movie. You need then, therefore, first and foremost, an actor who can carry that movie and who can act and is trained, skilled at the art of acting. I absolutely agree. However, that being said, you know, sometimes you get situations like, let's take Lion King, for example, right? I love the new Lion King movie that Jon Favreau did. I did not think the Beyonce voice acting was very strong. I was okay with it though, because Nala sings almost more than she speaks. I mean, even if you go back to the original Lion King, Nala doesn't have many lines, right? Nala doesn't have much lines. And so I never really had a problem with the notion that, oh, they cast Beyonce, because I thought that makes sense because the character doesn't have a ton of lines anyway. Plus, she practically sings. I mean, her song is the most important thing. Can You Feel the Love Tonight is the most important thing that Nala does in the movie, is that song. So, on that case, I could see getting it. But yeah, for the most part, the singing aspect has to come secondary to the acting aspect. I completely agree with you on that, K Major. All right, K Major also writes, last one for today, John. John, I love the animated Hercules. This ain't Hercules if I don't hear the song Go the Distance in some way, shape, or form. I'll still watch the hell out of it, though. I'm just saying I might want to fight an exec or two. I just feel differently. I would have been cool. Look, it was really neat. Let's stick with the Lion King analogy. It was really neat for me being in the Lion King and the theaters and having that epic opening of the sunrise coming up, and then the song of Circle of Life coming on. I literally had tears welling up in my eyes as I was playing, right? Beautiful, awesome. But I also would have been totally fine if they didn't do it as a musical. If they didn't do it with all the songs. I totally would have been okay with that. Because this is a different new incarnation. And as a different new incarnation, I'm okay if they try differently. For example, I know there were some people quite upset that the new Mulan isn't going to have the songs from it. I'm okay with that. I think the story is strong enough on its own that it doesn't need the music. I enjoy the music in the animated film, but I'm also looking forward to seeing a different iteration. So, but at the same time, I like the music they did in Beauty and the Beast, the live action remake. I didn't love the Beauty and the Beast live action remake, but I like the songs that they did, including the one new one they had. They put in one new song that I thought was actually really, really good. But aside from that, same time, I would have been perfectly happy just to see it as without the music. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go with this. It'll be interesting to see which way they go with this, because Disney has done both, right? They've done it with the music in their animated remakes, and they've done it with, and they've got Mulan coming out without the music in their animated remake. So let's see what they do. It's going to be interesting to see. I kind of feel like they won't put the music in, but I wouldn't put money on that because I know that there's a good chance that they will. So we'll see what happens. All right, Tony Hurd writes, 12 years ago today, the MCU was born with Iron Man. With the studio not wanting Robert Downey Jr. to writing the script while filming and investing a lot of money into the project, it was a miracle things came together the way they did. Yeah, it kind of is. Iron Man, we talked about this last year, or I think it was maybe during the Iron Man's 10th anniversary or something like that. We talked about how that was a movie that could have gone so wrong in so many different ways. Like today, everybody thinks about it's like, yeah, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., right? Robert Downey Jr.'s name was mud in the industry. All right. He did a couple nice little things like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. There was this other one he did. Why am I forgetting the name of it with the weird art style that was to it? Anyway, I'm freezing that. That was kind of nice, but he had sabotaged his own career once, started to get a little bit of a comeback, sabotaged his career again. And there were a lot of people who were did not want to have Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. There were a lot of people in the halls of Marvel and whatever that did not want Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. And, you know, Jon Favreau really fought for that. And they went with it. Now, would Iron Man have been just as popular if another actor had played it? It's impossible to say. Maybe even better, maybe a lot worse. We'll never know. But I think we can all say it worked out. I think it's safe to say that it worked out pretty well. But from them doing what some critics called, like some stupid film pundits called a poor man's Batman. Do you remember that? Like there were some stupid pundits out there who were saying that when Iron Man was coming out, that they're not really all that interested in it. I mean, they're excited because it was a comic book movie, but they're not all that interested because Iron Man is just a poor man's Batman. I was the one who was saying that. Even though there were some people saying it's just a poor man's Batman, there were just so many ways this thing could have gone wrong, right? So many ways. Now, they had faith in it, but, you know, Jon Favreau talks about how the fact that they knew it could work, but they didn't know how well it would work with the audience. But we forget, that is a movie that there was a million different ways it could have gone south. There was a million different ways it could have gone south. And they crushed it. And the rest is history, Tony. The rest is history. All right, D.A. Miller writes, "Hello, John. Ron Burgundy's," quote, not to be confused with Ron Jeremy, quote, "you're a smelly pirate hooker. Takes on a whole kind of wrong now. Thank for the filthy." Yeah, so for those of you who missed it, the other day I tried to quote Ron Burgundy, saying that escalated quickly. But instead of saying Ron Burgundy, I accidentally said Ron Jeremy. I have no idea why. And as you can imagine, the quotes have been pouring in about that one. All right, Brandon writes, "I know you don't do the which actor best role thing, but I have to say Willem Dafoe as Hades in live-action Hercules would be perfect. Thoughts?" No, there's no such thing as perfect. Number one, we don't know what their Hades is going to be like. Because their Hades may not be exact like the Hades we had in the thing. If you want somebody who would be perfect for it, well, and you're just trying to redo the animated one, well, then you get James Woods. That's perfect. But, you know, every iteration will have its own unique take on things. And that's the way it should be. And since we don't know how or what that character is going to be like, there could be 50 other actors who would be far better for the role than Willem Dafoe. But I always say, the most important thing is get somebody who's talented. Willem Dafoe is got talent pouring out of his ears. So if they announce Willem Dafoe tomorrow, I'd be all for it. But there's other actors too that I'd be equally as, if not even more excited if they announce it. But hey, if they said Dafoe was doing it, I'm all for it. All right. Undead Sick 83 writes, "Hey John, I saw your discussion about Cassian Andor with Robert Meyer Burnett yesterday, and I couldn't disagree more with you. I'm with Burnett on this, that Star Wars is too dark and gritty for Disney." That's nonsense. And it's just not Star Wars. Look at the Splash thing where they preached for censorship. That's not censorship, by the way. That's just put that nonsense away. Can we just stop with that nonsense? Them extending the hair on the character to cover a bare ass so they could put that on a family-friendly network so there's no nudity is not censorship. It's their own thing. Other versions of it are out there. They did not censor it. If it's saying it's censorship tells me you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what censorship is, because that's not it. There's real censorship. That's a real problem. That's not censorship. And you do disservice to the harshness of what actual censorship is when you use really loosely and flippantly the terminology to apply it to something like this. And we'll talk more about that in a second. I just don't know why anybody had any problems with it. Nobody had any problems with it forever when television networks had to make certain adjustments to movies so they could air it on their networks. Nobody screamed censorship because we all understood. Anybody could be watching the television live broadcast networks. You have to edit it for television purposes. We all understood that. Disney Plus is another network, and they have a very particular targeted demographic. And nudity is not part of their demographic, is not what they're going for. So instead of changing the movie fundamentally, they CGI'd extra long hair on Daryl Hannah just so it covers her bare ass and did no fundamental changes to the movie. So please stop misusing the term censorship, because when you use it so flippantly, you alleviate and lighten the harshness of what real censorship is. This is not real censorship, so please stop using that term. Please, because it does a real disservice and it undermines the severity of real issues of censorship when you use it so lightly like that. So please stop using the term like that because it's not what it is. Anyway, that being said, ultimately, it's all about the issues of toning things down and censorship, which becomes, again, it's not censorship. Please stop using that, which becomes more and more of a thing in present day movies and TV. The Walking Dead had several censorship issues until fans screamed about it and put a stop to it. And like Robert Meyer Burnett said, Thanos and Vision are fictional animated characters, while Star Wars or Walking Dead is live action. We live in an era where we are so scared and sensitive about explicit content, and it's really troublesome. At the end of the day, I'm with Robert. It's not Kathleen Kennedy. It's because Star Wars is about war, and Disney does only deal in things, in living happily ever after things. Thoughts? Nonsense. I appreciate your point of view on that, and your point of view is no more and no less valid than mine. But I will tell you, from my point of view, I think that's utter nonsense. First of all, what you're saying presupposes that the original Star Wars trilogy, outside of Disney, had so much adult content. Really? Really? The most gruesome thing, the most non-family friendly thing that happened in any of the original Star Wars movies is a dude got his hand cut off in a bar. That is the most gruesome thing that happened in any Star Wars movie outside of Disney. That's it. Nothing else. An emperor being thrown down the well. Ah! And I'll tell you this, while the space battle in Return of the Jedi is the greatest space battle scene in the history of cinema, and better than the space battle that happens, and the space battle in Rogue One is great, don't get me wrong. The space battle in Rogue One is great, but it pales in comparison to the visceral feel, that real feeling like I'm in the cockpit, you know, of one of the ships in the Return of the Jedi space battle. That being said, there was a lot more violence in the space battle above in this, what's the name of the movie? Why am I freezing the name of the movie? I just said it. Rogue One. There is a lot more violence in that space battle of Rogue One. I can't shake him. I felt like the death of the pilots was far more visceral. It was heavier and darker. This pretending that the original Star Wars films had some dark, heavy content and, no, it didn't. Like Rogue One, the war scenes on the ground were far more visceral and far more violent and far more, let's just say, mature than like the Battle of Endor. And I love the Battle of Endor. I love the Ewoks, and Return of the Jedi is my favorite of all the Star Wars movies. But the battle on the ground in Rogue One, it was way more violent, way more deaths. You know, I am one of the Force is with me, dying in his arms and death everywhere, and all the characters die. All the heroes die in Rogue One. It literally ends with the two main characters holding each other as they face oblivion, as the quote-unquote nuclear blast disintegrates their bodies. Show me something in the original the original Star Wars movies are better, but show me something in the original Star Wars movies that comes close to that level of dark or maturity. Nothing in the original Star Wars does. Nothing does. So I reject this notion that somehow, some way, the original Star Wars movies were these dark, mature, heavy, adult-themed things that they've scrubbed away and gotten rid of in the new movies. Hell, I don't like Rise of Skywalker, but Rise of Skywalker has a lot more violence in it. Not very good movie and not very fun to watch, but that being as it may, you know, it has a lot more than that. So this fairy tale that Star Wars was super dark and gritty and mature, and today it's less, I disagree. I really disagree. I just don't think the facts support that. Now, again, you see it that way, and I respect your point of view, and your point of view is no less and no more valid than my own. But I got to say, from my point of view, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. You know, Disney does a lot of dark, mature things in the MCU. Look at Sokovia. Look at the death of civilians and all that kind of, and we're not just talking about Thanos getting his head cut off, although that is a heavy thing. Yes, it's mitigated by the fact that he was a CGI character. Absolutely, that's a mitigating factor. But still, you have heroes pinning down the villain and one of the other heroes walking up and just summarily executing them by cutting their head off. That's stuff that Disney let them do. Having an apartment building filled of innocents die at the opening of Civil War. All the murder the heroes do in Civil War. And then, of course, Sokovia and all that kind of stuff. These are dark themes, not R-rated themes, but these are dark things that Disney let them do. I'm sorry. None of the evidence supports that position from my point of view. From my point of view. The evidence just doesn't support that position. There is an administrative problem at the head of Lucasfilm, which, despite the fact there have been some very good movies, that is Kathleen Kennedy. Alan Horn has given her a lot of leeway. You know, Alan Horn, who is the head guru of all Disney films, has given Kathleen Kennedy most control, as he gives Kevin Feige most control. Of course, Alan Horn is going to maintain a certain level of control, and Alan Horn is going to make sure that, you know, the MCU doesn't go outside of Disney's parameters. He's going to make sure Pixar doesn't go outside of Disney's parameters. Alan Horn's going to make sure Star Wars doesn't go outside his parameters. But we see that Alan Horn has allowed Marvel to do some very dark things while also being relatively family friendly. Star Wars has always been relatively family friendly. And it's the same things happen there. The issue is not Disney. Not that everything Disney does is awesome. Wrinkle in Time, anybody? Anyway, but the issue is not Disney. The issue is Kathleen Kennedy and her leadership of that organization. So, yeah, I respect what you're saying, but I just look at the actual facts in front of me, and it just doesn't add up to me. Again, this is the beautiful thing about being film fans. We look at these situations and we all have different points of view. And again, yours is no less valid than mine. But I'm just saying, if you want to bring it up to me and ask me about it, I got to tell you, I disagree. I disagree. But let's just all cross our fingers and hope things get better. Because, yeah, I walked out of Rise of Skywalker, which was not I don't believe a total train wreck of a movie, but I just walked out of Rise of Skywalker with the wind in my sails really taken out. I was just so disappointed with the film because I had a lot of high hopes for it, but it is what it is. Okay, anyway, Sheridan writes, I had this terrible thought. If Universal just wants to maximize profit, they could abandon monthly streaming like Netflix altogether and just offer their films and shows as rental and buying on VOD forever. Of course, after 3 months in cinemas. Thoughts? The problem is, and we've been over this a lot, and the studio heads all talked about this during the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable. I refer people to this a lot. You really should go and watch it. It's on YouTube. But there's this Hollywood Reporter Roundtable where they had the heads of all the major studios. Disney, Warner Brothers, even Netflix and Amazon, Universal and Sony. All the heads of all the studios did this big roundtable. And they talked a bit about the fact that home VOD does not generate a lot of income. So Universal could try that, but they're going to run into that wall. So I think that's going to be a problem for them. That's going to be a problem for them moving forward. It's a problem for the whole industry right now that they're trying to figure out and navigate. All right. My favorite viewer writes, just a theory. Spunk, the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, can take place during that 5-year period between Endgame and Infinity War. This way, Spider-Man used to exist. Thoughts? But here's the thing. If Spunk, which has already started, we've already got Venom, right? If that was taking place in between the events of Infinity War and Endgame, wouldn't some mention be made that half the population of the Earth at some point just disappeared? So the Sony Pictures universe is already underway, and no mention of that was made. So I would say, I think that kind of removes the possibility that Spunk it hurts to say it, folks. It hurts. That spump happens and takes place between the events of Infinity War and Endgame. That's just my thought, though. That's just my thought. Maybe they'll change that with the other movie, like once we get into Morpheus and once we get, it's possible, but I don't think they're going to go that route. They could. It's a possibility. I'm just saying I don't think they will. All right, Tyrone27 writes, well, I did it. I rewatched all of S. Craig Zahler films and figured out what gets me about his films. There's very little music. It makes his films so intense to me. Different to Tarantino. Also well-written, witty, LOL moments of dialogue. Cell Block 99, Bone Tomahawk, Dragged Across Concrete is that other one. Yeah, you know what? First of all, his films are so intense. Secondly, I don't think lack of music makes a movie better. I think silence, aka lack of music, attached to certain kinds of scenes in certain atmospheres that a scene or a collection of scenes is going for, can heighten what's going on in that scene. And I would say, whether you're talking about Bone Tomahawk, Dragged Across Concrete, stuff like that, when you're talking about those kinds of movies, that's really the DNA of his films, right? And so for his specific films in those specific types of movies with that specific kind of DNA, a lack of soundtrack sometimes can actually heighten what it is the director is trying to convey on screen. So I don't think it's a flat rule that says lack of music equals better movie. Not at all. But there are some circumstances, and I think that I've never really thought about that before, Tyrone. I think you raise a really good point. That could be one of those elements that maybe if music was there, it would take a little bit away from the intensity of the scenes. I haven't really thought about it before. It's a great observation, man. All right. Next up here, where are we at? We are at, that was Tyrone. We're at Jetfire97, who writes, one of two. Here's my list of favorite movies from its respective franchise/universe. That's an interesting way to look at it. Terminator 2, I agree. Iron Man 3, ooh, I got to disagree about that one. But hey, that's the beautiful thing about movies, man. Each one strikes us differently. If Iron Man 3 is your favorite, then Iron Man 3 is your favorite. All right, Too Fast, Too Furious. Again, that's probably my least favorite of the Fast and Furious franchise. But again, that's the beautiful thing about movies, man. The Dark Knight, I agree. Mission Impossible 6, Transformers 3, Lethal Weapon 2, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, X-Men 2, Beverly Hills Cop 2. Yeah, a lot of them are really good. You know what's funny? The X-Men ones are interesting because there's some of the X-Men films are so bad, but some of the X-Men films are so great. You know? If it wasn't for X-Men 1, we would not be in the golden age of comic book movies right now. X-Men 1 is the movie that launched this golden age of comic book films. You know, when you listen to the producers of The Dark Knight and stuff like that, they talk about how it's when we saw X-Men 1 that the light bulb went off on all of Hollywood that goes, we can make comic book movies like that. And that's what kicked it all off. Then X-Men 2, which for a little while I thought was the greatest comic book movie of all time. X-Men First Class, which I don't love as much as most people, but I do like it a lot. X-Men Days of Future Past, I think is a top 10 greatest comic book movie of all time. Logan, which I think is a top 3 comic book movie of all time. The Deadpool movies, kind of paving the way for R-rated comic book type of material again. I mean, they just did some great stuff in there, and there's just no wrong choice. X-Men 2 is a great choice in that one, Jetfire. I like that one. Interesting list. I like the way you did that. Favorite films from their respective franchises. Nice list. All right, Matt Thornton writes, one of my favorite directors who doesn't get talked about these days is Chris Columbus. Two of my favorite films by him are Mrs. Doubtfire and Stepmom. Granted, yes, Chris Columbus has done a lot of good stuff. The problem with Chris Columbus is he hasn't really directed anything good, and that's up for subjective interpretation. But from my point of view, Chris Columbus hasn't actually directed anything good since 2001, 2002, whenever the last Harry Potter movie was that he did. Because after that, he did stuff like, what was that Adam Sandler 8-bit video game movie? Hold on a second. Now, if this is going to bother me, let me bring this up here. Then I know he did that with the girl from Heroes, Hayden Palanteri. I'd always she did that one called Beth Cooper or something like that. Hold on a second. Where is this one he did with Adam Sandler again. Pixels, that's it. So he did Pixels, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which I didn't think was all that great. He did Rent, which I didn't think was all that. I love Rent the stage show. I wasn't all that big on the movie too terrible much. So to me, he hasn't really directed something really good in almost 20 years. But I'll tell you one thing that's got my attention. He's supposed to be directing a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. That has my attention. That's got me interested and curious. First of all, I just love the idea of a Five Nights at Freddy movie. That's a great game to try to adapt into a movie. Like, the setting of that game is so perfect to try to do a little horror film out of. I think it's a great fertile ground to try to grow a horror film out of. But Chris Columbus doing a Five Nights at Freddy's, that also really has my attention. And so, but yeah, man, he has done some great things, and I hope he can return to that same level of greatness, and maybe Five Nights at Freddy's will be the one that kicks it off for him. Let's see here. That was Matt. Ike Moore writes, I know you don't like playing what if X actor played X role. I don't, and yet people keep throwing them at me. But what do you think of Bill Hader playing Hades in the live action movie? Again, same thing I think about a lot of guys. Bill Hader's great. He's a super talented guy, so if they announced tomorrow that he was playing Hades, I'd be all for it. There are 20 or 30 other guys I would also feel that same way about, but Hader is super talented. I think he's, dude, his show, why am I freezing on the name Barry? His show Barry on HBO is so much better than I thought it would be. Like, I didn't watch it at first when it came out because I just didn't think it looked all that interesting. Enough people said, no, you really got to check this out. So fine, I went and checked it out. It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, if they announce him, he'd be one of those names that I would be perfectly happy with. I'd be perfectly, him, Willem Dafoe, James Woods, Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, look, there's 20 or 30 names you can mention that I think would be, yeah, they'd do a good job as that, and Hader is one of them. He's also got that comedic kind of slant to him as well. Julius Goodwin writes, just wanted to ask if you've seen A View from the Halfway Down yet. If you're talking about the BoJack Horseman thing, I did watch it. Yeah. Very nihilistic. Very nihilistic. I mean, it's they're going for something very deep. And I guess it would have more of an emotional impact if you watch the whole series, which obviously I have not done. But I did see that. And yeah, very nihilistic. And obviously they were going for something very deep. I have a feeling it would have had a more profound impact on me if I knew the character more and if I actually watched the show. So that's probably why people who do watch the show really got a lot out of and really were impacted more by that View from Halfway Down thing than I was. Because I watched it, it's like, okay, yeah, this is pretty deep. Cool. Very nihilistic, very dark. Okay, cool. And then I just moved on. But I didn't have an attachment to the character or his struggle per se. So it was just kind of, I watched it, interesting, and then I moved on. But I'm sure if I watched the whole series, it would have had more of an impact on me for sure. All right. Man Mountain Gherkin. By the way, speaking of Mountain, did you see that the actor who plays the Mountain on Games of Thrones just set the world record for like, I think it was like 1,100 pounds he deadlifted? Like over 1,000 pounds. Like, he is legitimately the world's strongest man. I mean, I heard about him like, no. And then I watched it and it was just crazy because we're used to seeing these power lifters, right? Lift bars and the bars bend a bit, right? It's like, woo, wow, that's a lot of weight. He lifts this bar and the bar, which I'm sure could like lift cars on both, but the bar's like this. I'm like, holy crap, that is so freaking heavy. Like 1,000 pounds. It's crazy. I don't know why I went off on the side note. Oh, because your name is Man Mountain. I was like, did you see the video of the mountain? Anyway, my opinion, the 2005 movie Sahara with Matthew McConaughey and Steve Zahn is a more enjoyable Indiana Jones movie than Crystal Skull. Guilty pleasure? I didn't think Sahara was terrible. I don't think it's all that great. By the way, Steve Zahn, side note, Steve Zahn should be a bigger star than he is. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure why he's not at that same level of, say, a Paul Rudd, a Will Ferrell, what have you. I'm not sure why today he's not one of the top comedic actor names. Because granted, he's been in some bad movies, but an actor can't do anything about that. All the actor can do is give the best performance they can. and in the terms of comedies, deliver the best comedic timing that they can. Steve Zahn to me is a dude who I just always think he works. And by the way, I just saw him in a little documentary that's on Hulu, I believe, called Neat, N-E-A-T. It's called Neat. And Steve Zahn does these he does these little explain parts in the documentary, which my own documentary is going to have. But it's a documentary about bourbon. I don't even drink. I don't drink alcohol, at least extremely rarely. And I don't drink bourbon or anything like that. But I don't drink, and I was fascinated by this documentary. But what happens is, as they're going through all the interviews, then they'd have these little scenes throughout the documentary of just Steve Zahn sitting in this reading room chair, like in a nice, smoking jacket and whatever, to kind of do a little bit of exposition in between the rest of the regular documentary segments. I thought it was very effective. And I'm actually planning on using that technique. I was planning on using that technique anyway, but then seeing it being done, I'm like, oh yeah, that can totally work. I'm going to be using that same technique in my own documentary. But anyway, yeah, side note. Is it a better Indiana Jones movie than Crystal Skull? I don't know. Guilty pleasure, sure. I'll go with you on that one. I think it kind of falls under the category guilty pleasure a little bit. Sure, why not? The Wakandan Forever writes, "Won't You Be My Neighbor is a must-see. Seeing the life of Fred, Mr. Rogers, is truly inspiring. As a person who has experienced child abuse, his example reminds me to not just survive, but to thrive. It will change you." And hold on a second here. Let me just bring something up because I want to get the name. Because I always forget the name of the dude who directed this. And speaking of documentaries, like insanely good documentary. Morgan Neville. I mean, you guys have probably heard me talk about this documentary. At least I hope you have. If you haven't, let me just mention something here quickly. This documentary is the kind of documentary, and I'll just bring it up here briefly. This kind of documentary, I often say, when you see a great movie can change the way you see the world. A great movie can make you change the way you see the world. But a truly phenomenal movie will change you. A great movie can make you change the way you see the world. A truly phenomenal movie can change you. And I contend that this documentary I like Mr. Rogers. I've never had any, I'm a Mr. Rogers fanboy or anything like that before. Yeah, I know who Mr. Rogers is. Yeah, I watched some of that Mr. Rogers when I was a kid, and yeah, he was a good dude. But when you see this documentary, I remember I walked out of the theater. I went to go see it by myself. I used my AMC A-list. Ann was busy that night, and I wanted to walk down and watch it. So I walked down to the AMC 6, not the AMC 16. I walked down to the AMC 6. Went in, just watched it by myself. And I remember when that movie was over, I walked out, and I think my hands were shaking. I think my hands were shaking a little bit. It's phenomenal. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. What this dude, this was the baddest ass mother effer in the world. And it sounds weird to say that, but Mr. Rogers is the baddest ass mother effer to walk the face of the earth at least the last 50 years or so. It blows you away, and it makes you look in the mirror a little differently. It makes you stop and look in the mirror a little bit differently. Guys, I cannot recommend this documentary more. I cannot recommend it more. Yeah, I think schools, seriously, like 8th grade, every kid in America should spend one class one day, spread it over 2 classes and watch Won't You Be My Neighbor. I don't know. It's just the most phenomenal film. So I concur with you on your assessment there, Wakandan Forever. I concur with you on your assessment. All right, next one up here. Wakanda Forever also writes, my favorite films growing up, martial arts, Fist of Fury, sci-fi and fantasy, The Last Dragon, and Action Jackson with Carl Weathers, ladies and gentlemen. Action Jackson. John, what are yours? My favorite martial arts film growing up was Shokasagi's Revenge of the Ninja. My favorite sci-fi fantasy, obviously, is Star Wars. Favorite action film of all time is Arnold Schwarzenegger's True Lies. That is my all-time favorite action film. But what was, I don't know that it was my favorite action film growing up. What was my favorite action film growing up? I don't know. I probably, if you had asked me when I was 14, I probably would have still said, I would have said Star Wars. So Star Wars would have been both my sci-fi and my action one. But so I'll go Shokasagi's Fist of Fury, Star Wars, and True Lies is what I'll go with. All right, Wakandan Forever writes, to John, Rob, Aaron, Jonathan, Ray, and live chat and the viewers. Did I get everybody? LOL, I love you all. Have a great day. Wakanda Forever. And I agree, man. May all of you guys have a fantastic weekend ahead of you. May you have a great day already. And thanks for spending some of your time hanging out with us here as we just talk about some movies together. That's always good. Thanks for the well wishes, Wakanda Forever. All right, Court Shake writes, with all the damage to the theater industry, what are the chances Cineworld still buys Cineplex? I believe the deal is done. The deal's done, right? The final, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the final signatures have been applied. I think it's a done deal. So at this point, Cineworld would have to sell them because they own them. Unless I'm forgetting something, but I believe they went through all the stages and I believe the final signatures were done. I believe. I could be wrong about that. But I believe the contracts are signed. I think that's a done deal already. Interesting thought, though, because if something like this could change something like that, but I believe it's done. They are already owned. So I think so at any rate. All right, Dave XP writes, John, I'm just wondering why movie 43 is not in your unholy trinity of bad films. Is it because it wasn't a wide release or because you didn't even consider it a movie? Honestly, both. Let me just go back and double check this. Okay, let me go back and double check this because I believe it didn't get a wide release, but it may have. It may have gotten a wide release. Let me bring it up here. Movie 43, its widest release. You know what? It didn't have a huge release, but it did have a big enough release that you can call it a wide release. It released, it didn't get like 4,000 screens, but it did get 2,000 screens. That is considered a wide release. So it did get a wide release. I think part of the reason I don't consider movie 43 amongst the unholy trinity of the worst wide release Hollywood produced motion pictures of all time is I don't even really consider it a movie. Like, it's just a bunch of sketches thrown together and then they released it as a movie. It's not even really a movie. This is how bad movie 43 was. By the way, listen to some of the people who were in the star-studded lineup is crazy. All right, listen to this. Let me just pull up the IMDb page here for it. IMDb. Okay, listen to this lineup. Listen to this. Dennis Quaid, Greg Kinnear, Common, Seth MacFarlane, Hugh Jackman, Kate Winslet, Roy Jenkins. Let me just pull it. I know Chris Pratt is in there as well. Where do we go? Liev Schreiber, who is amazing. Naomi Watts, Anna Faris, Chris Pratt, JB Smoove, Emma Stone, Richard Gere, Kate Bosworth, where'd it go? Justin Long, Jason Sudeikis, Uma Thurman, Bobby Cannavale, Kristen Bell, Leslie Bibb. Keeps going on here. Anyway, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Chloe Grace Moretz, Gerard Butler, Sean William Scott, Johnny Knoxville, Halle Berry, Stephen Merchant. And it keeps going. Terrence Howard, Aaron Jennings. Who else? Elizabeth Banks, Josh Duhamel. I mean, everybody's in this movie. Everybody is in this movie. But I think you just kind of nailed it. I never really considered it a motion picture. You know, I never considered it a movie because it's just a bunch of random sketches horrible, terrible. And this is how bad it was. I think pretty much none of the stars of the movie went to the premiere. I remember that was a big deal. That was a big deal. But basically, they all refused. None of them went to the premiere. That's crazy. Once in a while, one cast member won't show up to a premiere. And normally when that happens, it's because they're on set shooting another movie somewhere else in the world. That's normally the case. This movie, like, none of the stars of the movie showed up. At least none of the significant name stars. That's how bad that movie was. But yeah, it's a really good question, Dave. I think the reason why I don't put it on that unholy trinity list of Catwoman, Battlefield Earth, and Highlander 2, The Quickening is because, as you said, I don't think subconsciously I even consider it a movie. It's just a bunch of random sketches they put in movie theaters, but I don't really consider it a movie. Maybe I'm right to think of it that way. Maybe I'm not right to think of it that way. But that's just kind of the way my head kind of handles it, I think. Because it would be a strong contender to be in that unholy trinity. It would be a contender to be on that unholy trinity. All right. Orange Hand writes, would the reaction to Cats have been less vitriolic if they had gone with practical costumes like the stage show instead of those CGI monstrosities? I don't think so. Honestly, I think one of the strong points of Cats is actually the CGI. That is mind-blowing CGI. It's mind-blowing CGI. I think Cats is reviled because it's bad. So I don't think the reaction would have been, I think it would have been just different. I just think people would have been making fun of it a different way if they had used practical costumes like the stage show. I just think it would have been different vitriol, but I still think it would have been there. All right. Andy Hong writes, HBO Max just announced today a limited time offer of $11.99 per month for the first 12 months. That's like $4 off. I immediately took to the offer the moment I found out when I woke up today. By the way, you've been loving your content since 2013. Thank you so much for that, Andy. You're a big part of why I became a film fan. Oh man, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's always good to hear that. And you're right, that sounds like a great deal, especially with more and more every day, us finding out how much content is going on HBO Max. It is crazy. And at $11, first of all, for $12 a month, you're getting all of HBO. That's worth it right there. And then all the other stuff they're putting on it, it's kind of crazy. That's a good deal, man. That's a good deal. Thank you for putting that on everybody's radar, because I know I'm going to go look into that as soon as I'm done the show today. So thanks for putting that on our radar, Andy. All right, 24 Savage writes, over under 40% Sony changes the name of Spunk. I think I take over 40. Not like 80% chance, but I take over 40. I think at some point, rational heads will prevail in the boardroom of Sony and go, wait a minute, what the hell? Because listen, it sucks because I like a lot of what Sony has done the last number of years. I think Sony has done, they went through a big reorg a number of years ago, and I really feel like they've been doing some good things at Sony the last number of years. And so I'm actually kind of rooting for them. I'm cheering for Sony. That said, this was a effing dumb name. How did not one person in that boardroom go, yeah, hi, do we really want people saying spunk? Is that really what we want? Like, I just, it's so idiotic. Anyway, an anonymous viewer writes, so, Emperor Palpatine, how did you survive being blown away with the Death Star after Vader threw you off the tower? Emperor, trying to think of a good excuse because he doesn't have one, responds, oh, it was the Force. Ta-da! I mean, listen, I know, let me tell you this. Them not explaining in the movie how Emperor Palpatine is back, when in the movies his defeat and demise was such a pivotal plot point, and now he's just back, and in the movies you don't explain at all how he's back. That alone is not what makes The Rise of Skywalker a poor film, in my opinion. There are people who like The Rise of Skywalker, and that's great. I don't want to disparage anybody from liking a film they like. That's great. If you like it, that's awesome. But from my point of view, that's not what made Rise of Skywalker a bad film, but it certainly was a bad element of that movie. I mean, how nobody, again, much like the Sony boardroom, how nobody sat around and said, you know, the defeat of Palpatine in the original trilogy was a pretty significant point of story in the Star Wars saga. Should we not allude to how it is he's back in the movie? I can't believe one person then kind of raise a hand and go, excuse me, point of order. Are we really not going to say anything about how Palpatine's back? Nah, it'll be fine. Again, that's not what made Rise of Skywalker a bad movie, but it certainly didn't help. It certainly didn't help. All right, next up, Sveens86 writes, don't know if you're interested, but you can watch Danny Boyle's, I've heard about this. You can watch Danny Boyle's stage production of Frankenstein with Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller on the official National Theater YouTube channel, available until May 7th. I've heard of that. And listen, I'm not, I go to the Pantages in LA with Ann every once in a while. Like, I'll go watch Hamilton, and we went to go see, by the way, Waitress is really good. If you ever get a chance to watch the live show of Waitress, it doesn't sound like a guy thing, but it's so good. Go see it. So I'll go with Ann to those once in a while, but I'm not really a big theater guy. Although when I was in high school, my senior year in high school, I wrote the drama program's play that year. I wrote the play and I wrote all the music in it. I wrote the music and I wrote the play. And even though I'm not a big theater guy, but I heard about this and I was instantly really interested, mostly because Benedict Cumberbatch, I just think the dude's a terrific thespian. And to see him doing stage, if you want to know how good an actor is, see them on stage. No camera angles, no cuts, no, 17 takes. It's just an actor on stage raw. If you want to see how good an actor truly is, watch them on stage. That's where you can really get a sense of how good an actor is. And I would love to see that. So I didn't know that it was on YouTube right now. So thank you so much for pointing that out, dude. I really appreciate that. I think Ann would be very interested in that too. So thanks for putting that up there. I'm going to go check that out. Thank you, man. All right. Julius Goodwin writes, I am considering starting my own cinematic universe as per your suggestion a year ago. I'm thinking of naming it Butt Smack Jelly Jubes on the Flip Pancake. Still sounds better than Spunk. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now, Julius. I don't recall saying that, but I'll be damned if that doesn't sound exactly like something I would make up. Because every once in a while, I try to make up like a theoretical name on the spot, like just something, I don't know, Felipe, the sentient dancing microphone, right? Like I just try to come up with something. Naming a cinematic universe, Butt Smack Jelly Jubes on the Flip Pancake. I don't recall saying that, but yeah, that sounds like something that would have come out of my mouth. I can't deny that. That does sound an awful lot like something that would come out of my mouth. So you create that cinematic universe, Julius. You create that cinematic universe, and you call that damn thing, what is it here? Jelly Jubes on the Flip Pancake. You name it that. You embrace it. You own it. You go with it. And live long and prosper. Okay, let's move on here. Where are we at? Okay, now I am getting messages here saying that some people are getting breakups in the stream. The stream on my end looks healthy. I'm getting a healthy signal. I'm getting a message here from, I'm looking on my YouTube dashboard. It's saying that it is an excellent connection. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We've been going for about an hour right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to I normally take a little bit of a break about an hour or so in to go and refill my drink. So we're going to do that right now anyway. Let's see if the problem alleviates itself while we're taking the short break. So hang tight, guys. Don't go anywhere. We will be back in just a couple of minutes. We'll see you in a minute. guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience. Now, for those of you just joining us in right now, apparently, despite the fact that my YouTube control center was telling me that we had green light, excellent connection, apparently there was buffering going on for a lot of people, even though it was YouTube's thing was telling me excellent connection. So we took a little bit of a break. I disconnected from the stream and then reconnected to it. Now, it should be noted, I was on with YouTube's partner support a few days ago, asking them about some issues we've been having with live streaming. And one of the things they said is they apologized, and they said, we've been having a lot of unforeseen issues due to the fact that since the pandemic started and everybody's at home, their live streaming has gone up like 4 times, like quadruple the amount of live streaming they're used to having. So I'm going to write this one off to, they were just some kind of glitch in their live stream, but apparently we are up and running again. So yeehaw, we're up and running again. I did have a chance to go down and refill my drink anyway, so that's good. So let's keep things going, and hopefully the issue won't happen again. But regardless, let's keep on pushing through here. Okay, next one up comes to us from, who does this come from? This comes to us from, we did Julius Goodwin. So now we're on Mr. Hank Dunn, who writes, what happens first, an R-rated Disney proper film or a movie filmed in space? I would say an R-rated Disney film, especially if we count films that are being done under Fox, which is owned by Disney, but a Disney proper, I don't know. I just, that's not what Disney wants their brand to be. When they have stuff they want to do that's probably rated R, they'll probably put it under another one of their umbrellas. Like maybe they'll put it under Fox, but Disney proper? I don't know. It's against their brand. Certainly not as long as Bob Iger's there. I know that. Not as long as Bob Iger's there. All right. Let's see. Mr. Hank Dennis writes, what would you rather see? Justice League Mortal or Superman Lives? Oh, that's easy. Justice League Mortal. Absolutely. Listen, I get why they pulled the plug on George Miller's Justice League Mortal. If that's what we're talking, I think that was the name of George Miller's movie. That Armie Hammer was going to be Batman. They pulled the plug ultimately because they did not want to piss off Christopher Nolan. And Christopher Nolan was none happy that they were going to get another movie universe going with a Batman character while he was still directing Batman films. He was not happy about it. And I'm sure the Christopher Nolan angle isn't the only reason they pulled the plug on it, but you bet your ass it's a big one. But once the script of it leaked last year, I got a big kick out of the script. I think it would have been a wonderful way to kick off a DCU. Like some people say, no, you got to do it like Marvel. You have to do all individual films and build up to a big thing. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. All you got to do is make a good movie. That's all you got to do. Because guess what? Guardians of the Galaxy, they didn't need, and as far doing solo movies first, building up, it worked for the MCU. Great. But that's not like, that's now the magic formula. Guardians of the Galaxy did not need a standalone Star-Lord movie, and then a standalone Drax the Destroyer movie, and then a standalone Gamora movie, and then a standalone Rocket Raccoon movie, and then a standalone Groot movie, and then do Guardians of the Galaxy. They never needed to do that. They don't have to do that. They will just come right out of the gate, boom, Guardians of the Galaxy, go. That could have worked for the DCEU. Could have. But I thought that it was a bonkers script. And I really, now Superman Lives, I would have liked to have seen that, but I'm telling you that Justice League Mortal, I really would have loved to have seen that. Okay, next up. Let's see. Mike Hill writes, hey John, I was watching The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogies recently, and it occurred to me, why is there no scene explaining Saruman's turn to the bad side? I'm surprised nothing was shown in the Hobbit series, because they didn't need to. There was no need for it. Like, unlike, remember we were just talking about Palpatine. Like, Palpatine's defeat and death was a major plot point narratively in the movies. To then now come to him in Rise of Skywalker and suddenly he's back and suddenly he's alive with no explanation, that made no narrative sense, right? There was simply no narrative need to go back and give us the backstory of Saruman. There was no need to. There wasn't any point in it. We knew what we needed to know. It's kind of like Palpatine in the original Star Wars trilogy, right? We never knew where Palpatine came from because we didn't need to know where he came from. All we needed to know about the Emperor in the first three movies was he was big, he was bad, and he was powerful. That's all we needed to know. Like, we didn't need to go through the original trilogy, like, how did the Emperor take over the galaxy? We didn't need to know that in the original trilogy. We didn't need it. I mean, it wouldn't have been bad information to have, but the movie totally didn't need it to work. And I kind of feel the same way about Saruman. All we needed to know about Saruman, that, listen, it's been a long time since Gandalf and Saruman saw each other. And Saruman was just figured out. There's no beating Sauron. Might as well, if you can't beat him, join him. That's all we needed to know. For the purposes of the Lord of the Rings movies, that's all we needed to know. So I'm not surprised they didn't do it. And it would have been a useless use of screen time. Like, those are long movies, man. Those Lord of the Rings movies are long movies. So anything that doesn't need to be on screen, like Tom Bombadil. I like Tom Bombadil in the books, but you didn't need Tom Bombadil in the movies for the movies to work, so you take it out. And I never felt once that we needed to see some sort of backstory explaining the turn of Saruman. Now, much like the Palpatine situation, if Saruman was in, like, say, one Lord of the Rings movies and was established as this great hero and good guy and we all know and love him, and then another movie comes along and just all of a sudden he's bad with no explanation, okay, that becomes a little bit problematic. But that wasn't the case here. So I never really felt like we needed it personally. Never felt like it wouldn't have been bad if they put it in, but I didn't think it was needed. Anyway, that was just me. All right, Julius Goodwin writes, what happened to Travolta? Seriously. He was having a great career, possibly Hall of Fame level, and but the last I saw him, he was acting in Gaudy, God Awful, or dressed as a woman in Hairspray. By the way, By the way, I thought he was really good in Hairspray. I never really understood the casting and why Travolta played the mom character in Hairspray. I understand there's connections between that and the Broadway show. I understand that, but for the purposes of the movie, I didn't really get it. But when I saw it, I thought he was actually really good. What happened to Travolta? I don't know, man. But listen, he went through one career resurrection as it was, because he was really big early in his career, the Saturday Night Fever kind of era. Then he went away and disappeared. And then Look Who's Talking came along, and it kind of re-sparked interest in Travolta. And then all of a sudden, Travolta had his career back again. And then he had it for a number of years. And listen, when Travolta's on, he's great. He's a little bit hit and miss, though. Like, sometimes he'll deliver something really strong, and then sometimes it's like, he's not that good. I mean, it's like I said, a little bit hit and miss. So you put him in something like a guilty pleasure movie of mine is Broken Arrow that he did with Christian Slater. Or you put him in something like Face Off, which I adore. I adore him doing Nicolas Cage is fantastic. Seriously, John Travolta doing his best Nicolas Cage impersonation is stuff of legend. It's great. And then there's things he's not so good. So I don't really know. That would be an interesting thing to look at sometime, is like, where did Travolta's career go south? But listen, even if it is gone south, he has had a fantastic career. John Travolta has had a fantastic career. And he could have a revitalization again. It can happen to him again. But even if he doesn't, he's had a career that most actors in the business would completely envy. Considering 90% of the actors in the business never get a big break in the first place, he's had a career most actors would dream of having. So, but yeah, where it kind of took that south turn, Julius, that's a good question. Something maybe we should look at sometime. It's a good topic to bring up. All right, Dodger Ryan 124 writes, "Hey John, I just saw Pump Up the Volume." Now, speaking of Christian Slater, I just saw Pump Up the Volume 1990 for the first time, and it is now my favorite Christian Slater movie. It's so fun. We just talked about Christian Slater. And here he is. By the way, this little Christian Slater side note, one of the funniest Star Trek cameos ever was, I can't remember which movie it was specifically, but it's the one where Sulu is the captain of the Excelsior. And like Captain Sulu is sleeping in his sleeping, and an ensign comes and disturbs him, and it's Christian Slater. It's like out of nowhere, Christian Slater out of nowhere. It's like an RKO. Christian Slater out of nowhere. It was just right there. And God's like, really? They brought in Christian Slater to do that? By the way, side note, Christian Slater had a short-lived television series about 7 or 8 years ago. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Christian, that I thought was really good and really, really interesting. And it only lasted one season. I think it was called My Own Worst Enemy. I think that's what it was called. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I can look it up here. 2.5 men. Oh, by the way, his character in Archer is amazing. I love him in Archer. What was the name of that damn show? Come on now. Let me find it. This is, of course, one of the drawbacks of doing shows live instead of pre-recorded and edited is you have to put up with me trying to look up this information stuff. What the hell was it called? Not Kirby and Thin, not lying, yeah, that's right. It was, oh my God, was it 2008? I feel like it was 5 years ago, but apparently it was 12 years ago. Holy crap. Anyway, he was the star of this show called My Own Worst Enemy, which I thought was great. Let me bring this up here in case you haven't searched. So basically, here's the basic idea of My Own Worst Enemy. So Christian Slater plays this dude. He's this average dude, right? But when he goes to, okay, I'm trying to remember exactly how it works. Like when he goes to sleep and wakes up, is it when he goes to sleep, it changes? Hold on a second, let me look this up. All the 2 men in comic, except the fact that they have the same body when each from other months go. Okay, so basically, he's got this split personality, right? He's got this split personality. And one personality, which is actually the true personality, is this super agent, right? Meanwhile, the other personality is this suburban living family man, right? Now, you think when the show starts that the suburban living family man is who he truly is, and somebody programmed this alternate personality into him. But it turns out, I believe it was the other way around. So anyway, these two characters become aware of each other. And they start communicating with each other. We've seen other shows start to do that. Like in Daredevil, there was that character, I believe it was in the 3rd season of Daredevil. I think it was the 3rd season of Daredevil. Or was it? No. It was Iron Fist season 2 that had, I think it was Typhoid Mary. But anyway, had that character or split personality, and her and the other personality learned to start communicating with each other. Or for instance, Frost in the Flash show. But before any of them did that, Christian Slater did it in this little show called My Own Worst Enemy. And I can't believe it's 12 years old now, but I really dug that show. And I was really sad when it got cut after one thing. I got sad when it got cut up. But Pump Up the Volume, by the way, is a great one too. Anyway, we're off on a Christian Slater episode here, guys. Okay, let's see here. What's next? Hank Dunn writes, Disney should put all the Fox Marvel movies on Hulu. Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, I think most of the X-Men films work perfectly well on Disney Plus. I think they work perfectly well on Disney Plus. And I think Disney Plus subscribers would love to have those movies. So I don't know. But again, I think here's the thing. I think that Disney Plus subscribers might feel a little bit slighted if they took those movies and put them on Hulu. I'm not saying it would be the worst idea in the world, though, because I can see the argument to be made for that. But I have a feeling they're going to want to put it on Disney Plus because, again, I think Disney Plus subscribers will feel slighted if they don't get that. So, and I think most of it would fit perfectly fine on Disney Plus. Maybe a few F-bombs get beeped out or televisionized like they do on television. But other than that, I think they fit perfectly well in there. But I can see an argument to be made for that, Hank. All right, Sahil writes, to all Sony execs that are definitely watching this right now, y'all should change the name to Sony Cinematic Universe of Marvel. Scum. Come on, they're not. Sony's doing a good job. Sony, especially the last few years, Sony has done a pretty good job. I just don't understand. It's because they've been doing a good job that really befuddles me how they could do something so stupid. And it's not important. Listen, them calling their cinematic universe spunk will not make the movies any better or any worse, right? Just the name. It doesn't matter. Just like them calling the Marvel Cinematic Universe the MCU, that doesn't make their movies any better. And them calling their universe spunk will not make the movies any better, and it won't make the movies any worse. And that's all that matters. But it is a stupid thing from a PR perspective. I mean, it's such a dumb name. And from a marketing perspective, you can't market the name spunk. I don't know. You can call MCU, and we can all talk about the MCU. Spunk? Anyway, but I don't think that makes them scum, necessarily. Mike Thompson writes, I bet Ron Jeremy came up with the spunk name, probably. Somewhere, somehow, down in the recesses of the boardrooms of Sony, Ron Jeremy is there. I have the perfect name. Mike Thompson also writes, say Marvel wanted to make a Spider-Man versus Hulk movie. Who distributes it, Sony or Universal? The movie couldn't get made until Sony or Universal worked that out. Sony and Universal, because Sony has the right to distribute any Spider-Man movie. Universal has the right to distribute any Hulk movie, where Hulk is the main character. Or in a case like Spider-Man versus Hulk, that. So there's the two sides would have to come to an agreement as to how that would work, or the movie simply couldn't get made. So under current agreements, they couldn't make it because there's no clear thing about who would be allowed to distribute it. And so that is something that Sony and Universal would have to get together and make come to some sort of arrangement to allow one or the other to do it, or both to do it, depending on how they wanted to approach it. All right, Mike also writes, one of two. Tony probably developed the Edith glasses prior to the events of Infinity War and planned to give them to Peter years down the line when he was ready to retire and Peter was fully matured. He didn't plan on the snap happening or himself dying within an hour of it being undone. Here's the problem with that logic. So we talked about this on one of the companion videos, that Tony giving the glasses to Peter is one of the dumbest things done in the MCU. It's one of the dumbest things any one of the characters ever did. It was certainly stupid of Tony to do it. Because, number one, probably the most dangerous technology in the world, and he put it into the hands of a child. He gave it to a high school kid who immediately almost killed his fellow students, and then next immediately blindly, naively gave the technology away to a supervillain. Hap wouldn't have done that. Pepper wouldn't have done that. The people he really trusted in his life truly wouldn't have done that. I mean, you don't give it to Nick Fury because you're an ally of Nick Fury, but you're also you think Nick Fury is a little bit shady. So you probably don't give him to Nick Fury, but you give them the Hap before you give him to Peter, and you give him the Pepper before you give him to Peter. Anyway, the other problem with it is this. By the way, what does Edith stand for? He wasn't planning on giving it to Peter when he retired. What does Edith stand for? Even dead, I'm the hero, is which by the way is a great name. That is such a perfect Tony Stark name to give something. I laughed my ass off when they said that in the movie. Even dead, I'm the hero. So no, Tony wasn't planning on passing them along when he retired. So Spider-Man dies in Infinity War. 5 years pass. Tony just assumes that nobody's ever coming back. We know that in Endgame. Peter or Tony they can't come back. And then Peter is literally back for 10 minutes before Tony dies. So the two problems, Mike, with the notion of he developed it way long ago and was just going to pass them on to Peter when he retired. Number one, the name of the stuff is Even Dead, I'm the Hero. So he wasn't planning on passing on to Peter when he was still alive. Secondly, that would mean that Edith was 5-year-old technology. 5-year-old technology. And I think, Tony Stark does a lot more advanced things in the meantime, and understanding that Edith was a power that could give somebody global domination if they actually had control of that power. You would think that in the 5 years since this high school kid died, that he would have made arrangements for this global threat of technology, this Edith thing, to pass on to another character, since Peter was dead. So what did Tony do? In his dying breath after he snapped his fingers, and Pepper's talking to him, it's okay, you can rest now. 1 second, Pepper, I gotta change my will. Mental note, give the Edith stuff to the kid anyway. What were you saying, Pepper? Oh, I'm dead. I mean, it was just... So that would mean that Edith at the time of Spider-Man Far From Home was 5-year-old technology. And yeah, it made no sense. Now listen, I say that as somebody who is a big fan of Spider-Man Far From Home. I like that movie very, very much. I didn't think it was quite as good as Homecoming, but that's okay. It was great. I really enjoyed Far From Home. But that was a dumb thing for Tony to do. Not to mention, it makes no logical sense within the construct of how the MCU and Tony's life progressed in its chronology. It just doesn't make any sense. So it's a plot device and whatever, we just accept it and we move on. But Tony taking potential global threat level technology and putting it into the hand of a high school student, who the first thing he did was invade the privacy of his fellow students, nearly got his fellow students killed, and then naively handed it off to a supervillain, kind of proves that point. It was an idiotic thing to pass it off to a child. But, it is what it is. It is what it is. I still love the movie, though. Okay, anyway. Chris Warden writes, number 1 of 2. I think the spat between AMC and Universal, remember, it's not a spat between AMC and Universal, it's a spat between all the movie theaters and Universal. It's not just AMC, it's all the movie theaters of NATO, that the North American theater owners, of which AMC is a member. It's all of them. It's not just AMC. Will get resolved amicably. I gotta believe so as well. There's just too much money on the table to walk away from. AMC will want those Universal billion-dollar franchises like Fast and the Furious, Jurassic World, and Despicable Me. Plus, Universal will want those films in AMC theaters. And again, it's not just AMC. It's all the theaters. There is no single member theater of NATO that will put any Universal film on their screens if Universal tries to do a day-and-date release. We just heard the head of Cineworld, which owns Regal, just come out and say that too. They reaffirmed to everybody, we do not play movies on our screens that try to release on VOD the same time they release in theaters. That's exactly what AMC said. Under these terms that Universal was talking about, that we're going to try putting movies out on the big screen and on VOD at the same time. AMC has said, no, you're not. Not on our screens. Regal has said, no, you're not. Not on our screens. All of NATO has that particular rule that's been in there for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. So, but I have to agree with you. Universal knows that they will not make any money if those movies are not on the big screen. Instead of a Fast and Furious movie making $1 billion, it'll make 200 million, maybe. And they know that. So there is too much money on the table for everybody involved. I have to agree, Chris. At some point, Universal and NATO and all the theaters, they are going to figure this out. They have to. Because there's no way that the theaters don't want Jurassic World on their screens, and there's no way that Universal doesn't want to make the money that comes with putting them on the screen. So I got to agree. At somehow, some way, they will get this figured out. At least, I mean, or else it's mutually assured self-destruction. They got to get this worked out, and I think they will. All right, BW Rosa writes, hey, John, been watching the final Avengers Assemble scene from Endgame recently due to the 1-year anniversary happening. I freaking loved it. I actually tweeted about it the other day on the anniversary. I tweeted, this is the reason. If you go on YouTube, and I put it up on my Twitter as well, this is just a good example. Just one of many, but just a good example about why movies experienced in the theaters are so superior to watching movies at home. Like you just, and again, it's a big example of it. It's one of the hallmark examples, but still the point is there. Go on YouTube and look for theater reaction Endgame portals, right? That last scene when the crowd reaction, when Mjolnir flies into Cap's hand, when On Your Left comes over and the portals open and all the characters, including Spider-Man, come swinging through and all this kind of stuff. Apparently, at which point, Tony said, hey, Spider-Man's back. Mental note, change my will to please include Edith going to... It makes no sense. Anyway, the audience reactions to that, it's amazing. Just amazing. You know, people overlook just how huge the audience reaction was in Infinity War when Thor shows up in Wakanda. When the Bifrost opens, boom, and the smoke clears, and it's Thor. They're, bring me Thanos. And like, Mark Ruffalo, you guys are screwed now. I mean, that moment was, I'm getting goosebumps. I mean, they had some big highlight moments, man. They had some big highlights moments. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, you've got Spunk. I hate Spunk. They got to change the name, dude. They've got to change the name. All right, so Heel writes, MJ, Peter, you shot webbing all over the bed. Peter, that's not webbing. It's just the spunk. I'm telling you, and look, and I'm sorry, I know we're 12 years old. I know we're 12. But come on. You don't have to just be a 12-year-old, and I admit we are 12 years old, to know that spunk sounds like you're talking about something ejaculatory, right? I mean, it does. It absolutely does. They've got to know that. They've got to change it, dude. They've got to change it. All right. Avery Zavala writes, hey, John, today, if you read this on Sunday, and I am reading it on Sunday, is my brother Sean's birthday. He watches the show. Could you tell him happy birthday? I was going to get him a Leo or Idris Elba autograph, but I couldn't tell what was fake and what wasn't. This is my alternative. Well, thanks so much for that. And to your brother, Sean, dude, happy birthday, man. Thank you so much for being a part of our community and watching the show. I hope you have a triumphant, wonderful day, followed by a triumphant and wonderful year filled with great, sweet victory all along your path. So thanks a lot for being a part of our group, man. And thank you so much. And thank you to Avery for sending along those well wishes to you. So Sean, happy birthday, man. I hope you have a great one. Thanks for sending that in, Xavier. All right. Let's see here. Where are we going? We are at Marie Seifring, who writes, hey, John. Hi, Marie. Are you looking forward to the remake of The Witches, scheduled to come out in October of 2020? With Robert Zemeckis directing, a cast which includes Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, and Stanley Tucci, it looks like it could be really interesting. Here's the thing. I am interested, but it's not because it's a remake of The Witches. I think we talked about this on the show when it was first announced. Like, there are people who just like totally love The Witches. It's not a particularly super special film to me, but I am interested in it, even if it wasn't a redo, because it's Robert Zemeckis directing Anne Hathaway, who I think is like, I will never understand the hate Anne Hathaway gets. I just don't understand it. That girl is effing amazing. Like, you could put her in any movie, in any role, she will stand out. And I even remember going into Batman The Dark Knight Rises, which I think is the weakest of the Christopher Nolan films, but still, I remember going into that thinking, you know what, I like Anne Hathaway and everything, but her as Catwoman, her as Selena Kyle? Really? I don't see it. She was the best part of that movie. She was amazing in that. The girl is incredible. And even in like that Ocean's 8 movie, like, at first you think she's not that big of a deal, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, she's like, and she's in this movie with screen icons. Like, she's in that movie with like Cate Blanchett, and she is like stealing the movie. I will never understand the hate that she gets. Not to mention she's super beautiful, and it's just, I don't know. I think she's absolutely fantastic. Not that that all the movies she appears in great, but anyway, you add on top of that Octavia Spencer, who I adore, who, by the way, promised to make me cookies one time, and I've still not gotten those cookies. I will hold her to that if I ever get the privilege and pleasure of speaking with her again. Stanley Tucci is an all-time great. I mean, you put all that together, it doesn't even have anything to do with the fact that it's a remake of The Witches. I'm just looking forward to this movie. This cast, directed by this director, with that kind of a premise. I just think it's an interesting sounding movie. So yes, mark me down. Now, I'm not going to lie and say it's in my top 5 most anticipated movies of the year, but yeah, I'm interested in this film. You damn right I'm interested in this film. Bring it on. Thanks for sending that in, Marie. All right, Tyler Yeats writes, do you ever have movies where you know you want to watch them, but just haven't gotten around to watching them and have been putting them off? That's how I've been with the Godfather movies and Goodfellas. Got to check those off soon. Thanks for all you do. Oddly enough, not really. Like, movies to me are my priority over television. Like, movies are the priority to me over television. So there's really not many movies, if any, I can think of that are movies I really want to get around to, but I really haven't. But there are a number of television shows that I've always wanted to get around to and maybe right now haven't. Now, I've been slowly checking those off my list. Like, one of those for the longest time was The Wire. And then a couple years ago, I finally got around to watching The Wire. And then like The Expanse had been on for a couple of years already. It's like, oh yeah, I always want to check that out because everybody's telling me it's so great and I really should check it out. Fine. But it took me a little while to do it. And I love The Expanse. But there are more television shows that are like that are like, yeah, that looks really good. But I've just never gotten around to watching them. Again, mostly because movies take priority for me over television. But yeah, man, I feel you. But yes, dude, Tyler, do yourself the great favor of watching the Godfather films and Goodfellas. Do that for yourself, man, and be glad that you did. All right, Matthew Phillips writes, would you rather have the MCU in Deadpool instead of having Deadpool in the MCU? I think the former would be easier to do, preserve the established universe. No, now you're trying to change the DNA of an entire... See, at least if you're trying to put Deadpool in the MCU, which I think is a mistake, Kevin Feige will make it work because he's Kevin Feige, but I still think it's a mistake. I think Deadpool should be in his own separate cinematic universe. That said, if you put Deadpool into the MCU, then all you're trying to do is work around the DNA of one character. How do we make this one character fit into this MCU paradigm? If you try to put the MCU in Deadpool, now you're trying to change everything just to fit one character's DNA. To me, that's a much more monumental task and a much more destructive task. So yeah, I think I don't think they should do either, but if they had to pick one, it would be a much easier thing and you're having to change less if you just take the one character and plop them in the MCU rather than the other way around. So anyway, that's how I kind of see that. All right, let's see. Roman Stewart writes, Can't wait for my Bring on the Filthy hoodie to arrive. Well, thanks so much for ordering one, man. I appreciate that. By the way, guys, thank you, Roman, for giving me an excuse to plug it. Go over anytime to thejohncampeashow.com/shop. So thejohncampeashow.com/shop. Go and check that out. Anyway, thank you, Roman, for ordering one. Do me a favor, dude. Send me a picture when you get it of you wearing it. Just send it to me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. I would love to see it. I'd get a kick out of it. So thank you for ordering that, man. All right, next up. David Dilks writes, one of two. I watch your show, but I usually disagree with you. That's great. I want people to disagree with me. That's the whole idea. I don't like the idea of, look, I don't want people to always agree with me. And that's just not fun, and it's not practical. It's not going to happen with film fans. The issue is, can we gain something out of hearing from each other's different points of view? That's the cool thing. So I'm glad you said that. All right, my question is, would the Star Wars prequels have worked if they were more fantasy with Anakin and Vader as two different people? No. A Dwayne Johnson-style Yoda and a good-looking Lee Pace, I like Lee Pace, like his Thandril, which we got in the Hobbit movies, style Palpatine. Would it have been a nice reveal to have Dwayne Johnson play Yoda in the prequels and then reveal that he was actually tiny in Empire Strikes Back? No. No. Listen, I'll say this, David. I think what you're proposing is interesting. That's interesting. But more than almost any other franchise, canon has been important in Star Wars. It's not so important anymore, obviously, because they're constantly breaking canon now. But for a long time, canon was important. The whole idea of the prequels was, let us go back and see the origins of this character that we know, Darth Vader, and see how we got there. You totally break that by doing a what if Elseworlds version of Star Wars. I think it just would have pissed everybody off. Even if they had done it well. I have a feeling even if they had done it well, it would have pissed everybody off. So no, I don't think it would have been, like, and ultimately, who knows? Maybe these movies would have been terrible. I mean, you can, premise of a movie is not a movie. Premise of a movie is your starting point. You still got to make a good movie out of it, right? And that's the hard part. And I've seen great movies made out of questionable premises, and I've seen terrible movies made out of a great premise. But ultimately, I think it just would have pissed a lot of people off if they suddenly did that. And of course, at the time, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was not nearly the star that he is now. But I see where you're getting at. But no, I don't think it would have made it better received. If anything, I think there would have been an outright revolt. Because that's not Vader. They wanted to see this Star Wars universe. Where did this happen? Where did it come from? And it may not have worked, but I don't think this one would have worked either. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it would have worked. But I got a feeling it wouldn't have worked anyhow. Good, interesting imagination, though. I kind of like the way that you're looking at it differently, David. All right, next up. Curtis Lopez writes, oh my God, it's Beyonce. No, it's Lady Gaga. Listen, that episode of the Harley Quinn show, the Dr. Freeze or Mr. Freeze episode, so good. And listen, it's not just Lady Gaga. It's the way he says this. It's Lady Gaga. And we've watched that episode like 3 times now. Every time that Clayface says, it's Lady Gaga, Anne dies. I don't know why. She thinks that's the funniest thing they've ever done on Harley Quinn. She just laughs her damn ass off. But yeah, Funches as King Shark. Oh my God, it's Beyonce. It's also really hilarious. It's a great line in a great episode. I loved that. All right, Mr. TJ Lynn writes, Oscar is hard to win, but there are people who won Oscars very early in their career, like Sam Mendes and Jennifer Lawrence. If they deserve it, they should win. But do you think winning an Oscar too soon, in general, might have a bad ramification on their career? I don't know. I think there is yet to be any like definitive evidence that shows that somebody winning an Oscar ended up being a bad thing for them. Now, listen, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s career was never at the same height as it was when he won his Academy Award for the Tom Cruise movie. Why am I forgetting the name of it? The Show Me the Money movie. I'm freezing on the name of the movie right now. Anyway, I've seen it 100 times. But that's not to say that his career would have been great after that. Actually, he got offered some bigger things, but he made some questionable decisions with his career after that. And that was the big thing. Jennifer Lawrence won an early Oscar, but then she was nominated again a couple of times after that. Actually, no, let me bring this up here. Let me bring up Jennifer Lawrence, because I think she had a couple of more of Academy Award nominations after that. Let me see here. Oh my gosh, she was nominated 3 other times. So she won her Oscar in... so she was nominated for an Oscar in 2011 with Winter's Bone, which is the movie that really put her on the radar for everybody. Then in 2013, she won her Academy Award for Silver Linings Playbook. But that didn't hurt her career because she got nominated 2 more times after that. She got nominated again in 2014 for American Hustle, and she got nominated again in 2016 for Joy. So, yeah, that clearly didn't hurt her. Sam Mendes has continued to have a really good career with it. So I don't know. It's an interesting question, TJ, but I don't think there's any like data to suggest that it became an encumbrance moving forward. That doesn't mean, listen, because who knows what happens to your career after you do something great. You still have to make good decisions. You just can't ride that for very long. So I don't know. It's an interesting question, something we should think about. All right, Everything Entertainment writes, couldn't believe my eyes, but Universal still has an untitled Purge movie scheduled for July 10th. I think they'll try and pull this simultaneous VOD theatrical release on that one. I don't know, because I haven't heard anybody say anything about it. I've heard nothing. And I mean in terms of marketing. Now we're in May, which means we're 2 months away and not a peep about the movie. So it's possible. I'll tell you what, though. The Purge, I think it's the 3rd movie. Because there was the original Purge. And then there was Purge Anarchy the 3rd one? I can't remember. There was the first one with Frank Grillo, which was really pretty good. But then they did another one with Frank Grillo. And I was excited about it, and it sucked. And let me just bring up Box Office Mojo here for a second, because I can't remember. I don't remember it doing all that great either. So let me do a search here. So The Purge, not first Purge, Purge election year, yeah, with Frank Grillo. You know what? It did better than it did better than I remember. It made, now granted, for most movies this isn't a big number, but the movie made $118 million, which actually isn't bad considering it only cost them $10 million to make. So what was The Purge? Now The Purge Anarchy made about the same amount of money, made over 110 million, 112 million, so like 6 million less. So there was still interest there. And apparently, you know, that Purge TV show was out. And I never did see that Purge TV show, but I've heard it was actually pretty good. But I was a little bit confused that they were doing yet another Purge movie. It's like, aren't we purged out? But hey, people are still interested, so why not? I haven't heard anything like the slightest bit of marketing buzz. But even if you're going to do a VOD release, you've got to market it. And so my guess, simply based on the fact that we've seen not a peep about it, and the movie's only 2 months away, my guess is they'll probably bump it. That's my guess. I don't know that, and it is possible they could do this. But, you know, a movie that pulled in $100-something million, that could be a candidate to put to VOD. But I don't know. I got a feeling they're going to push it because, again, they haven't even started marketing it. All right, next up, Mr. T.J. Lynn writes, it's too bad that Peter O'Toole and Glenn Close never won an Oscar. I get it, but I still wish they had. I hope this tragedy doesn't happen to Amy Adams, Jessica Chastain, Ray Fiennes, Hugh Jackman, and Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, it is crazy. When you look at the list of the people, like top-notch, world-class talent, Amy Adams is a big one because wasn't Amy Adams, hasn't she been nominated like 6 times? I want to say 6. Amy Adams. It might actually be more than that. It might be 7. Let me see. Amy Adams has been nominated for an Academy Award 6 times. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in Junebug in 2005, For Best Supporting Actress in Doubt. She was great in Doubt with Philip Seymour Hoffman. In 2009, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in The Fighter, which she was really good with Christian Bale in 2011. In 2013, she was nominated for an actress in supporting role for The Master, also with Philip Seymour Hoffman. She was nominated for Best Lead Actress for American Hustle in 2014. And last year, nominated for actress in supporting role for Vice. Nominated 6 times. And she hasn't won yet. She might be the best actress. We often talk about best actor in the world that doesn't have an Oscar yet. And to me, that's easy. That's Ralph Fiennes. Ralph Fiennes is the best actor in the world who doesn't have an Oscar yet. But we don't often talk about actress, best actress that doesn't have an Oscar yet. I might have to say Amy Adams is that girl. Might have to say that Amy Adams is that girl. She may be the best one that's never won. And she certainly should. But I see Hugh Jackman getting one. I certainly hope Ralph Fiennes gets one. I really do. Jake Gyllenhaal is still a lot of his career ahead of him. I could see him getting one. But yeah, right now I still think the best actor not to have one is Ralph Fiennes. The best actress not to have one very well could be Amy Adams. All right, next up. Ash writes, in a previous answer, you say 20 million is ridiculous for starring in one movie, but is it justified sometimes due to box office guaranteed revenue? If Robert Downey Jr. was not in Homecoming, would it have made less box office than his juicy salary? P.S. Enjoying poker. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I've been doing live streaming me playing poker. I find that very relaxing. I really enjoy doing that. So I brought up the point the other day that I just don't believe no actor should make $20 million for doing 2 months' work. I just shouldn't happen. I think actors should earn a good living. I think they should be rich. I think all that kind of stuff. $20 million? No, none. Not a chance. Anyway. Would Homecoming have made 20 million less if Robert Downey Jr. wasn't in it? Would Homecoming have made $20 million left if Robert Downey Jr. wasn't in it? Well, let's look at that for a second here. Spider-Man Homecoming made $880 million at the box office with Robert Downey Jr. With Robert Downey Jr. in it. $880 million, which is a fantastic sum. Spider-Man Far From Home, without Robert Downey Jr. in it, made $1.13 billion. Made $1.13 billion without Robert Downey Jr. in it. Now, am I saying that means Robert Downey Jr. held back Homecoming? Not at all. That would be a ridiculous thing to say. All I'm saying is, I don't think you can make the argument that Spider-Man Homecoming, which, by the way, it was Spider-Man's first solo movie since being in the MCU. Everybody was excited about that and blah, 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 blah. As a matter of fact, there were some people, me included, that were a little bit turned off by the idea of having Tony Stark in the movie because it made it feel more like Iron Man 4, at least the marketing made it feel more like Iron Man 4 than it did like a Spider-Man movie. The movie was very clearly a Spider-Man movie for sure. But I remember in the early marketing, it's like some people were even like a little bit put off by it. It's like, what is this, Iron Man 4 or is this Spider-Man? Like, what is it going to be? But everybody was psyched. Spider-Man in the MCU. I think having an established MCU character like Tony Stark in that movie was definitely good for the movie. Would that movie have made more than 20 million less though, had you had somebody else in it? Had you not paid Tony or Robert Downey Jr. 20 million, well, however much he made for that movie to be in it? It's hard to make that argument when in the next Spider-Man standalone movie, where Tony Stark was not in the film, it ended up making significantly more money. So, and I'm not saying that proves anything one way or the other. All I'm saying is, you can make that argument and make it firmly if Spider-Man Far From Home comes out and makes like $650 million. Like, well, the one with Robert Downey Jr. in it made $880, and then they did one without Robert Downey Jr. It made like $650. clearly there's a causal effect there, right? There's a connection there. There's a causality. But when it's not there, I don't think you can make that argument. Again, I'm not saying that Far From Home without Robert Downey Jr. making $1.13 billion proves that you didn't need Robert Downey Jr. in the first one. I'm not saying that it proves that. But I'm saying that the fact that it made so much more money than the first one did negates the argument that the first one wouldn't have worked as well without Robert Downey Jr. So I think that it kind of negates it both ways. So I still say, no, you don't need to pay any actor $20 million. And I still think that Spider-Man is Spider-Man. And I still think the excitement of Spider-Man coming into the MCU was going to get a lot of people out to the movie theaters. And I think having Tony in it was actually good. I enjoyed the relationship between Tony and Peter, even if I don't like the stupid Iron Man Jr. suit that he gave Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's not cool enough unless he's Iron Man. I don't like that, but I love the relationship between Tony and Peter. And it worked, and it was great, but I don't know. It just puts the argument that that movie would have done significantly less well at the box office if Robert Downey Jr. wasn't in it, when the next movie comes out and does significantly more business. It doesn't prove that they didn't need him, but it's hard to prove that they did need him when that fact is there. So I think it comes out a little bit of a wash. Anyway, that's just, I could be wrong about that clearly. And there's different ways of looking at it. That just happens to be the way I'm looking at it right now. Anyway, thanks for writing that in, Ash. Interesting perspective on that. All right, next up, Jacob Olbert writes, my top 10 favorite movies. Number 10, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I love that movie. Number 9, For a Few Dollars More, which is also really good. Number 8, Captain America Civil War. Number 7, Scarface. Number 6, Kiss Kiss I almost said Gang Bang again. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which we talked about a little bit earlier in the show. Great Shane Black movie. Number 5, The Matrix. Number 4, Spider-Man 2. Long time, one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. Number 3, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Number 2, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And number 1, Pulp Fiction. We're talking about Quentin Tarantino, who came up a little bit earlier in the show as well. That's a nice list. What I like about, I like this, when people bring up their list, Jacob, and it's a mixture, right? You got For a Few Dollars More, you got a Scott Pilgrim, you got a Matrix and Empire Strikes Back, but you mix that in with a Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and a Pulp Fiction. I mean, I like it when people send in, I respect all top 10 lists that people send in, because what you love is what you love. But I really particularly enjoy it when I see people sending their top 10 and there's a nice mixture of films, you know? It's not all just one kind of film. It's a mixture of films, and I like that. So well done, Jacob. All right, Dan Ketchum writes, ever seen the 1997 made-for-TV live-action Justice League? I have not. It's so bad it makes the Star Wars Holiday Special look good. I know the old Captain America. Hold a second. Let's see, 1997. Let me see if I can find something here. I'm seeing nothing in IMDb for it. No, nothing's coming up. The only thing that comes up in Justice League is the 2017 film. So I'm not aware of it. Dan, I'm not aware of it off the top of my head. All right, Little Ray writes, what's your favorite documentary of all time? Well, we just talked about Won't You Be My Neighbor, right? Okay, if we're going to take that one out, there's two other documentaries that I really, really thoroughly enjoy. One sounds a little like a cop-out because everybody loved this, but truly, March of the Penguins, narrated by Morgan Freeman, is a fabulous documentary. If you've never seen March of the Penguins, narrated by Morgan Freeman, you might feel like, oh, these nature documentaries aren't really my thing. I respect that, but I have a feeling, like, I'm not really a big nature documentary guy either per se, but the March of the Penguin, the way they just told a story, I thought was wonderful. Another one that is not important, but I think it's infinitely fascinating and speaks a lot to human condition and human behaviors. And that is a little documentary by the name of A Fistful of Quarters. King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. It is literally a documentary about the real life battle between these two guys trying to establish themselves as the world's greatest Donkey Kong player. Is that important to the world? No, not in the least. But I also believe it's the same guy. I think it's the same guy who directed Horrible Bosses, I think. Fistful of Quarters. Let me just bring it up here. I think it's the same guy. The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, came out in 2007. It's absolutely ridiculously wonderful. Let me go on IMDb here. I accidentally looked up the box office for it. Hold on a second. Fistful of Quarters. Here it is. King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. It was directed by Seth Gordon, who also went on to direct... let me just bring up his list here. I thought he did Horrible Bosses. I could be wrong about that. Oh God, he directed that Baywatch movie. Ooh, that Zac Efron, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. It's an awful, awful movie. Yes, but he did direct Horrible Bosses after that. That's right. And I really like Horrible Bosses. Horrible Bosses is not for everybody, but I really, really like Horrible Bosses. Not a fan of his Baywatch movie. That was an awful lot of horrible. I did not like that one at all. But anyway, this little documentary he did, The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. I love that documentary. And you know what? It's a testament to how powerful documentaries can be. Because again, it's not an important movie. What dude considers himself to be the world's best Donkey Kong player is not important. And yet somehow this documentary finds a way to take this story about just normal people who happen to be fanatics of King Kong, and find a way to make it incredibly interesting with a hero and a villain, right? And I'm trying to remember what this is. It Billy Mitchell? I think that was this real life guy, Billy Mitchell, who is just a great villain of this story. Like the ultimate douchebag, at least in the movie he's portrayed that way. He might be a really, really nice guy outside of it. I don't know, but it is, if you have not seen King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, it really is, again, a documentary that proves how great and effective documentary films can be to tell a totally unimportant story and make it absolutely riveting all at the same time. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, Deadmar95 writes, Hercules has to be an actor from Europe. It's in his DNA. It doesn't have to be. You can just say the actor is from Europe. It does. The actor, all you have to say, what is important, I think, is that Hercules is Greek. It doesn't mean the actor has to be Greek. Not at all. You're saying that the character is Greek. I don't think they should say that Hercules is Italian, you know? Although there is some connection there too. But I'm saying it doesn't mean the actor has to be, though. That not at all, not in the least. All right, 50 Shades of Geek writes, is it incorrect to say that Universal trolled movie theaters? I see where you're going for there. All right, Little Ray writes, I think spunk would sound better if we pronounce it as spum-c. Has a little bit of a better ring to it, don't you think? Spum-c. Whew, I don't know that I'd say, Little Ray, that it has a better ring to it. I'll say it has a slightly less ridiculous ring to it. A slightly less ridiculous ring to it if we called it Spum-C, but even that, even that sounds a little bit rough. All right, D.A. Miller writes, John, have you seen Zoe Bell's YouTube Boss Bitch Fight Challenge? It's great social distancing fun. I did watch that. If you've not seen it, there's like, I mean, everybody's in it. It is so great. It's Zoe Bell, who's this great. She's good friends with Aaron Cummings, by the way, Zoe Bell. But it's this great thing where Zoe Bell starts it off, and it's a fight. It's hard to explain. It's a fight scene between all these female like stunt women and actresses and stuff like that. And the names that are in it are very impressive. And it looks really cool. It's hard to define and explain. You just got to go watch it. So please take D.A. Miller's recommendation. Go and search Boss Bitch Fight Challenge by Zoe Bell on YouTube. I think she just put it out. It's really fun. It's a really fun little YouTube video. Go and check that out. All right, Colin writes, The reasons why the Lego franchise went downhill: they waited 5 years between the first Lego and the second Lego movie. I disagree. That's not the reason. The Lego Batman was good, but Will Arnett is not a big star like Chris Pratt. Plus, Lego Batman was over 2 hours long. I disagree, Colin. I disagree. The Lego, first of all, Batman is what people care about, right? And also, Chris Pratt is not in the Lego movie. People didn't go to see Lego Movie because Chris Pratt's doing the voice of one of them. Maybe a few people, but not many. He's not even in the movie, right? And the Batman Lego Movie was ridiculously good. It was every bit as good as the first Lego movie. I thought the Lego Batman movie was every bit as good as the first Lego movie. Some people might even think better. It's fantastic. And yet, with the popularity of the first Lego movie, with arguably the most popular character from that first movie and one of the most popular characters in all of pop culture, Batman, and the movie was fantastic, it still took a major dip. Then Ninjago came out, which was also surprisingly good, took another big dip. And then they went back to it with, the Lego movie itself, and it did like half the business that the first Lego movie did. A 5-year wait is not why. I feel like, and I could be wrong, I feel like there was what's the word I'm looking for? Not gimmick. There was for lack of a better term, I know there's a better word for it that I'm just not pulling off the tip of my tongue right now, but there was a gimmickness to the Lego movie that I think people just got over the gimmick. Honestly, I think that's just the big thing. Like, this Lego movie was cool. It was great. I love the first Lego movie. But people clearly got the shtick of it just wore thin. I'm guessing. Because, like I said, the Batman one took a big drop. Ninjago, I can understand, but it took a big drop, even though it was also pretty damn good. And then the full-blown Lego movie part 2, the second piece comes out, and it does like half the business that the first one does. I just think the gimmick got old. Now, I hope I'm wrong about that, because Universal just signed a new deal. We're going to get some more Lego properties coming out, and I hope they're great, and I hope they do well. But yeah, I just think the shtick, the gimmick of Lego movies wore out after the first one. I think the first one was great, it was successful, and it's, again, guys, if you haven't seen the Batman Lego movie, do check it out. It is wonderful. It's really, really good. It deserved better. It deserved much better. All right, next up, BMC writes, so I read a speculation piece on the Hollywood Reporter talking about DC possibly building up an Amazonian versus Atlantis movie. A, how likely do you think this would happen? And B, how down would you be for that movie? Just the thought of it got me hyped. Well, it's premise though. It's just premise. It's an interesting sounding idea, but I don't believe that they're actually doing that, because we just talked about on the John Campea Show the other day that Patty Jenkins, the director of the Wonder Woman films, says she has a 4-film arc in mind. The first 2 Wonder Woman movie, followed by an Amazonian movie, then followed by a Wonder Woman 3. And there was like really no mention or suggestion of there being any kind of Atlantean involvement in that or anything. There's certainly been no suggestion in the DC cinematic universe up to this point that there has ever been any history of bad blood between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans. As a matter of fact, the only mention of it is that they worked together during the first encounter with Steppenwolf. That's the only kind of mention. So you'd think if there was a history of bad blood between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans, you would think that when you got King of the Atlanteans and, the Queen from Themyscira get together, there would be some mention. It's like, oh, yeah, Amazonian. Yeah, of course, our peoples were at war. So I don't know. Unless they're talking about a future conflict between Amazonians and Atlanteans. Maybe this Amazonian movie is going to talk about now the Amazonians being able to leave Themyscira and having problems with the Atlanteans. I don't know. Maybe it's a moving forward thing. Listen, I'm down for any premise. As long as it's executed well, that's all that matters, because the premise doesn't make a movie good. So would I, in theory, be down for something like that? In theory, I would be. Garrett Couch writes, 2020, Spider-Verse becomes Disney's Spunk. 2030, Spider-Man under Fox banner becomes Fox Spunk. 2040, NBC gets rights to Spider-Man, Peacock Spunk. And it's all a slippery slope down from there, Garrett. It's all a giant slippery slope down from there. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, my 5-year-old loves the show. Weird, right? Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for that. Also, we look forward to you doing the show with a baby strapped on your chest. Perhaps a classic John Campea rant, whispered rant, of course. Love the show. Keep it up. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. And listen, I make no promises. But it is because of people like you that I am trying to swear less in my show. I think you probably noticed on today's show, I say things like F that or whatever, right? When normally I would just say it outright. But the thing is, I've gotten so many emails, nobody complaining. I get so many messages and emails from people writing in and saying, man, you know, I watch your show with my kids and we have a great time. And like, nobody's complaining, but it makes me very self-conscious and aware that while the majority of the people who watch my channel are adults, I try to be aware, like I don't want to, and again, I make no promises that I'm not going to drop F-bombs. If I feel like I need to in a scene, I'm going to do that. But I am trying to be more aware of that because there are amazing people like you who are not only watching the show, but you're training your kids right by having your kids watch the John Campea Show with you. I'm trying to be aware of that. And I'm trying to reel it in a little bit. I mean, I'll get equally as passionate about something, but I'm trying not to swear as much. Again, I make no promises that I won't in my shows. I make no promises of that, but I'm trying to be a little bit aware of that. I'm trying. All right, thanks for writing that in. That's always special to me, hearing people are watching it with their kids. Like that's awesome to me. Thank you so much for that. All right, Aditya writes, The Last of Us 2 story is so bad. You don't know The Last of Us 2 story, so how can you say that? Just stop. Why did Neil Druckmann do this? How can you ruin main characters like this? Review and sales of the game will be abysmal. Okay, first of all, just stop. Please just stop. That's so idiotic. It's so idiotic. Listen, you had a few plot points spoiled, but you don't know the story, right? So just stop it. You don't know the story. And if you think The Last of Us 2's sales are going to be bad, good luck with that prediction. The Last of Us 2 sales are going to be great. Now listen, it might be terrible. It might be terrible. But you don't know anything about the story of this game. You don't know anything. You've heard a few details that got leaked. But listen, and listen well. If we had gotten a plot detailed of Avengers Endgame, and we heard Thanos gets decapitated 10 minutes into the movie. Yeah, they kill him. They all gang up on him, they pin him down, and then they just summarily execute him and kill him, and Thanos is gone out of Endgame in the first 10 minutes. The fan community would have been, and I would have been one of them. We all would have been, we would all cry and whine, and I would have been one of them. And you could hear it now, everybody bitching and moaning, how could they? Thanos is too important a part of the thing of the first one. You can't do it the second one. Why are they ruining MCU? Yeah. And that would have been me, and that would have been so many people if we had found out an isolated piece of information from the movie that we don't know the context of, that we don't know the fuller story, and we don't actually know what happens in the grander picture. We just didn't know. We wouldn't have known. We would have had that piece of information, right? We would have had that piece of information. And that's all we would have had. Again, I'm not saying Last of Us 2 is going to be good. I don't know that. It might be terrible. It might be the best video game ever made. All I'm suggesting is to people who are looking forward to Last of Us 2 and might be troubled by what they've heard out of those few details that have been leaked. If you're troubled by that, all I would say is keep it in your pants, hang tight, and wait till you see the actual full story with all these details we've heard about in context of the fuller story and actually see how it plays out. Because, again, I think we would have had this massive baby rage, me included. We would have had a massive baby rage if we had heard leaked, oh, did you hear in Endgame they get rid of Thanos in the first 10 minutes? He's so pivotal in the entire story, and they just take him out in the first 10 minutes, and he's gone. We would have had a baby rage, but guess what? Then we watched the full story, we watched the full movie, we got what its purpose was in context and how it played out later. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Last of Us 2. It might not. Last of Us 2 may be really bad. It might be really bad. All I'm saying is, if you're somebody who's been looking forward to this game, give them the benefit of the doubt until you see the game. Quit having baby rages. And again, I would have been in the same boat if they had done that with Endgame. I would have been there. What I'm saying is we collectively as a fan base, we need to stop having these baby rages off of hearing a segment of information out of context without knowing the full story. That's all I'm saying. Now look, if when you get this game and you play it out and it is not satisfactory to you and you think it's bad, then fine, then great. And it may very well turn out to be that way. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I also don't love what I'm hearing coming out of these details, but it's isolated pieces of information without the benefit of context and without being looked at in the perspective of the whole story. So I'm just saying, get through that first. And then if you don't like it, then we don't like it. But maybe we do. And maybe we love it. I'm just saying, just don't freak out about it over a few details when you don't know the full context yet. That's all I'm saying. Just take a breath, exhale slowly, then check out the game. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But don't be making big proclamations like that at this point because there's a few details that you don't understand the context of yet because you don't know the whole story yet, and then freak out about it. And listen, I agree. I don't like what I've heard coming out of it either, but I understand it's just pieces of information without context. Take a breath, give it a beat, stop freaking out and thinking up every worst case scenario you can, that you construct these entire things around these little pieces of, just take a breath, let the game come out and see it in context. And if we don't like it, we don't like it. It's all good, but just calm down for now. Just calm down. Because as we all do it, I've done it too. I'm sure I will do it again in the future. I'm sure you will too. But I'm just saying for all of us right now, just calm down. Let's take a breath. And I say that to myself as well. Let's just take a breath and let's see what happens. All right. Lee McHenry writes, greetings from Dublin, Ireland. John, did you see the new episode of Clone Wars? No, I have not. And I don't plan on it. Order 66 happens in the episode. So awesome again. I have no interest in it. I've watched 6 years of Clone Wars plus one episode. I'm not interested, but I love that you guys are watching it and that you guys are enjoying it. That's the most important thing. All right. Charles A writes, did you ever see the PokerStars.net, The Big Game? It was about an amateur being staked $100,000 for up to 150 hands if they don't lose it all by then, against pros like Phil Hellmuth, Daniel Negreanu, and Tony G. By the way, Tony G, oh God, I hate that guy. I don't know him personally. He might be the greatest guy in the world, but oh my God, I just love watching that guy lose. He's terrible poker manners. Terrible poker manners. So I like seeing him lose. For all I know, he's the world's best guy away from the poker table though, for all I know. Anyway, I'm aware of it, but I never did see it, as a matter of fact. Oddly enough, as big of a poker fan as I am, and as much as Daniel Negreanu is my favorite poker player in the world, I have never actually seen that. I should check it out. From what I understand, it didn't do particularly well. Maybe that's the reason why I never jumped on board with it, but I should check that out at some point, Charles. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, Benjamin Carr writes, I watched the Expendables franchise this week. It was awesome seeing all the action heroes together in the same movie. It is, listen, in concept, the Expendables are awesome. And I actually quite enjoy the first Expendables movie. Let me rephrase. I enjoyed the first Expendables movie. I quite enjoyed the second one. I thought the second one was a step up. The third one was, even though they did some pretty cool things, Look, all the Expendables movies have an element of tongue-in-cheekness, right? They all have an element of tongue-in-cheekness. They all do. But I felt like the first two Expendables just had the right amount of, like, eye wink, tongue-in-cheekness. The third one went overboard with it. And it kind of ruined whatever, as Robert Meyer Burnett would say, verisimilitude that did exist up to that point. So I didn't really like the third one. But yeah, in principle, the concept of Expendables is fantastic. Taking all these older action heroes, throw them together with some new action heroes, and just make this crazy thing. And listen, I'm all for them doing another one. Stallone has teased over the last couple of years that they're going to do one more. And I don't know if that'll actually happen, but I would like it if they did. I would, even though I didn't like the third Expendables movie, I would like to see them taking another kick at that. Let's see. Charles Campbell writes, John, I lost my dog of 14 years yesterday morning. Dude, I'm so sorry to hear that. They really are a part of the family. It's crazy. I lost my dog of 14 years yesterday morning to a respiratory illness and haven't been able to stop crying since. Hearing your familiar voice helped me to compose myself for the first time since then, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do. Oh, dude, thank you so much. And again, listen, as a guy who's been a dog owner my whole life, we've really had dogs my whole life since I was a kid. We still have our family dogs. Ann and I have our dogs. And like yesterday, again, it was a little bit of a scare for Ann and I because, you know, we took our dog in, just what we thought was just a general easy little thing. And it turned out there were more complications. Thank goodness it worked out. But, you know, and we were worried. Ann's had Lily. We have Lily and Shadow, but Ann's had Lily literally since Lily is now like 13 or 14 years old. But she's had Lily since she could hold Lily in one hand. Like the tiniest of little puppies. And Lily's been such a part of Ann's life and a part of our lives since, for me, it's been 10 years that Lily's been a part of my life as well. And like, that was a scary, scary thing. So dude, listen, I completely understand, and my condolences for like, only people who have pets can really get it. It's a hard thing, man, because they've been there. They've been that constant for you for so long. So my condolences to you, man. And I'm glad the show can be here. And I'm glad the film fan community can be here. And all my best, man. All my best. All right, next up. Spunkus. Spunkus writes, from now on, I would like to be known as Spunkus. Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters, United States. Call me Spunkus. Of the United States, I see Spunkus instead of Spartacus. I like it. Spunkus, adding on the little list. Listen, Spunkus at least sounds better than Spunk. I'll say that. Spunkus sounds better than Spunk. It just flows off the tongue a little better. Spunkus just flows off the tongue a little bit better than just Spunk. All right, thanks for sending that in, man. Mighty Tank 1 writes, think the latest episode of Harley Quinn might be my favorite. So funny. Oh my God, it was great. The latest episode of Harley Quinn was so great. It's the return of Batman. And all I'm going to say is this. The cold open of the episode is Warner Brothers and DC, let's just say, making some really interesting commentary about half of YouTube that's out there. I thought it was freaking hilarious. I laughed my ass off. And it's like, yep, it's the DC and Warner Brothers just basically completely nailed like half of YouTube right now. It was absolutely hilarious. But the episode itself was really, really good too. Like the dynamic between Batman and Alfred was wonderful. I thought the Lucius Fox stuff was really good. Jim Gordon, I was annoyed with the Jim Gordon character at first when the show first started, but I love the Jim Gordon character now. And Bane might be my favorite character in the show. Bane might be my favorite character in the show. I mean, it's these little characters that at first I thought this is going to be ridiculous, like Gordon, but now I love him. King Shark, I love now King Shark. Who else? Oh, Bane is like, God, I love Bane. Kite Man. Hell yeah. Kite Man. I just love, but yeah, this last episode was so freaking good, man. It was so freaking good. Let's see here. Why is it stuck? Come on. There we go. Okay. Next up. Mighty Tank 1 writes, also, have you checked out The Last Dance with Michael Jordan yet on Netflix? Fantastic. No, it's funny because my buddy Ryan and I were just talking about this yesterday. And he's like, have you been watching this Jordan documentary series yet? I'm like, no, I haven't started watching it yet. He's like, get on it as soon as you can. I'm hearing nothing but amazing things about it, and I'm very, very anxious to sit down and start watching. I just haven't really had the opportunity, but yeah, I'm on it, Mighty Tank. I am on it. I'm going to be checking that out because I hear great things about it. All right. Lee Crow writes, Earth 2 John made me sad the other day, saying it was the 10th anniversary of Peter Jackson's Halo movie. That was my favorite video game series / universe, and I always thought it would make a great movie. Is it too late now? Sadly, I kind of think so. Oh, no. Well, listen, I've said for a long time that I think every year that passes, it becomes less and less likely. But remember, they are doing a television series. I don't know if it'll be any good. Might be great. But that is coming. Now, listen. Halo should have been a movie 10 years ago. It should have been a movie. And I'm telling you right now, I love Peter. You know I love Peter Jackson. I love Peter Jackson. I am telling you right now, if Peter Jackson had volunteered to direct that movie himself, we would have got a movie already. But the people financing the movie pulled out for a couple of reasons, but one of the big ones was Peter Jackson selected a guy who had never directed a film before to be the director of it, Neil Blomkamp, who did later on did a great job on District 9, which was a full-length feature version of his short film, but then did some kind of not so great movies after that. At any rate, the thing is, at the time, Blomkamp had never directed a film before. He had never even been an assistant director on a film before. He had never worked in any capacity on a feature film in his life. And Peter Jackson wanted him, as the producer of the movie, to direct this huge tentpole $200 million Halo project. And the financiers pulled out. They're like, nope. You don't have to get Steven Spielberg, but you want a guy who has literally never worked on any movie before in his life to direct this movie we're going to invest $200-300 million in? No. And the whole project died. And if Peter Jackson had said, fine, I'll direct it myself. If he believed in it, he should have directed it himself. And if he had directed it himself, I guarantee you we would have had a Halo movie. I guarantee you we would have had a Halo movie. And it probably would have been great. It probably would have been great. But we didn't get it. But we are going to get that series. I think it might be even, if I remember correctly, I think it might be HBO that's doing it. But anyway, we are going to get a Halo series. So let's see how, I would prefer a movie, but let's see how that turns out. All right, Russell Amador writes, hey, John, non-movie related, but decided to share some exciting news during these quarantine times. My movie-going sidekick, my co-pilot, my better half said yes to the ring, and we are now engaged. That is exciting stuff, dude. It is always great to hear. You know, the other day, one of the viewers wrote in that said him and his fiance just had their first child, which is great to hear. And you're right, dude. Listen, during these BS times that we're living in right now, it's great hearing something that can make you smile. So that is awesome stuff, Russell. Congrats to you. Congrats to your betrothed. And may you guys have smooth sailing between now and whenever you guys decide to hitch it up and make it official. Good luck to you, man. And that is some good stuff. Thanks for sharing that, man. That put a smile on my face. Thank you so much for sharing that, Russell. And congrats, man. All right, Sean Shackelford writes, I'm confused. Has Avatar 4 and 5 been shot yet? No. James Cameron made it pretty clear that, hey, listen, we're planning on doing Avatar 4 and 5. But if we do 2 and 3 and they don't do well, they're not going to happen. So yeah, to the best of my understanding, no, they have not shot Avatars 4 and 5. Nor will they before the debut of Avatar 2, which is apparently is going to be in 73 years. So at this rate, the movie was supposed to come out so many years ago, still so far away. Anyway, the forever drama of the Avatar franchise. All right, Johnny Weiner writes, your disappointment view on Rise of Skywalker is the exact same for me for Civil War movie. Really? At first, I really enjoy it, but watching again over and over, I started to dislike it. But I don't think I see it as a bad movie like you do for Rise of Skywalker. How should I see it? Well, listen, Johnny, I can't tell you how you should experience a movie, right? A movie is a living piece of art, and art strikes us all in different ways. There is no right way to watch it or wrong way to watch it. You watch it and it has a certain impact on you, and that's what it is. And listen, I love Civil War. I love that movie. But that doesn't mean everybody's going to, and it doesn't mean you're going to, even if you want to love it. That's the interesting thing. It's like, you don't get to choose which movies you like. You can lie and say you like it, but it's like food, right? All of our taste buds are unique and different from person to person. You can put, a piece of steak in your mouth and your taste buds tell you if you like it or not. You don't decide if you like it. Your body tells you if you like it or not. Movies are much like the same way. You don't choose whether you like a movie or not. You don't choose whether a joke makes you laugh or not, unless you're going to fake it. It's just that you as an individual are a different person from everybody else, down to your DNA. And like a movie and a piece of art is going to strike you in a certain way. And if it doesn't work for you, man, it doesn't work for you. And there's no apologizing for that. If that movie don't work for you, it don't work for you. There are a million movies we agree on, and there's always going to be some we don't. And that's going to be one we don't agree on, and that's fair. That's the beautiful thing about film. That's the beautiful thing about it. So, Johnny, you're asking the wrong question. There's no way you should see it. You watched it, you experienced it, you have a certain experience with it and a certain reaction to it, and it is what it is. No explanations needed. All right, 50 Shades of Geek writes, John, I just realized something. In Infinity War, if someone dusted while on a spaceship flying through space, when they came back in the second snap, did they come back inside the spaceship or in that exact spot in space they were when they dusted? That's something that's been brought up a lot of times. That was a question that came up a million times after Endgame. People were asking that on the show all the time. And I think, I'm trying to remember who it was, but I think somebody from Marvel kind of put an end to the debate and kind of said, this is what happened. They would have appeared in any kind of safe place. Well, so if you were in like a Boeing 747 in the air when the snap happened, then you probably reappeared in that plane as it's on the ground somewhere. You didn't appear at that exact spot 12,000 feet in the air, which would have been devastating. But rather you would have appeared. So I think somebody from Marvel came out and stipulated that, because it probably would have been a part of Hulk's thought process as he snapped, right? So that's my guess. And I believe that's what somebody associated with the MCU had clarified at one point. I got to go back and try to remember who it was that said that, because I can't remember entirely off the top of my head. All right. Leo Milmet writes, finished Lucifer. Good on you. Great show. Final shot of the finale was like, whoa, with Lucifer on the throne in hell. Amazing. Oh, the feels. I wish they had the guts to end it like that. Also, I'd like to recommend the 1976 classic Network to our audience. It's fantastic. Best film that year, and maybe the GOAT movie Monologue. Yeah, we've talked about Network quite a bit on our show, especially in the last couple of months. It's come up a few times. But let's go back to that Lucifer thing. Remember, I think that last scene of him, there was a possibility that was going to be the final episode. They shot that not knowing if there was going to be a season 5. They shot that not knowing if there was going to be a season 5 or not. So there was very much a reality in which that was going to be the series finale. And then they greenlit season 5. And now there might even be a season 6. Fingers crossed. But it was a fabulous shot. Like the camera coming back, and he's almost like Conan on the throne, like sitting on the throne of hell as the king of hell again. It was a great shot. And remember, they shot it and wrote it knowing that might be the season finale. Not just season finale, that might be the series finale. So they did it that way. But I would gladly trade that as being the series finale shot to get more seasons. I would gladly trade that. Yeah, in a heartbeat. That's just me though, Leo. That's just me. All right. Morse Codes writes, you got Spunk. I hate Spunk. Lou Grant, MTM. Like Spunk. Yeah, of course. A little bit of a different variation of Spunk. Mary Tyler Moore. You got Spunk. I hate Spunk. That was one of the most all-time celebrated shows that nobody today has ever watched. Is Mary Tyler Moore. I'm lucky that when I was younger, my mom would put on reruns of Mary Tyler Moore. That was brilliant stuff. That was brilliant stuff. ZMG Ruler writes, Disney's the only major studio with no F cinema score. Well, that's interesting. I did not know that. That's an interesting. Now, not a lot of films have F cinema scores, so I mean, it's not like every studio has 25 films that have F cinema scores except for Disney. But it's still, an interesting bit of trivia there. I didn't realize that. Undead Sick 83 writes, so you don't think Palpatine almost electrocuting Luke to death isn't dark? You don't think Darth Vader cutting off Luke's hand isn't dark? You feel like Han Solo being put in freaking carbonite isn't dark? Anakin Skywalker killing younglings in The Rise of Skywalker isn't dark? Palpatine Force Lightning throwing Mace Windu out of window isn't dark? Anakin taking revenge on his mother isn't dark? You're misquoting me, but I'll put you in your place here in a second. Anakin being burned alive and left for dead on Mustafar isn't dark. This all happened in Star Wars movies that aren't Disney. True, but I'm not saying there isn't anything that didn't that happened in, like, again, the dude getting his arm cut off in whatever. Yes, a Force Lightning of unlimited. Oh, I'm so weak, please, and he goes flying out a window. I'm not saying none of that stuff is dark. I'm just saying that none of that stuff is really dark. None of that stuff wasn't equal to in the ones that Disney have done. Even in Rise of Skywalker, which is not a good movie, even in Rise of Skywalker, there's stuff that is as, if not more dark in that. So I'm not saying there's nothing that wasn't dark in the original Star Wars stuff. Again, those are my favorite movies of all time you're talking about there. So tread lightly, man. You're on hallowed ground. You're talking about my all-time favorite films. Of course, there are elements that are dark-ish, but nothing you can't put on broadcast television. I mean, it's just what it is. The most gruesome thing that was done in, say, out of the first 6 films was the Anakin burning on Mustafar. That out of the first 6, that one moment was the most gruesome thing. But again, nothing you can't broadcast on regular NBC television if you wanted to. Somebody falling out a window? Dude, I see more violent stuff on Bugs Bunny Roadrunner, right? There's more violent, darker, heavy things on Roadrunner. That's not a fair comparison because that's actually pretty damn dark. There's a lot of stabby and dropping anvils and falling off cliffs and lots of death going on. It would be death if it wasn't for the fact that Wile E. Coyote was apparently immortal. But what I'm saying is there's nothing in the original Star Wars films you can't put on television. Nothing. You know, a hand getting cut off, a bloodless hand getting cut off. John, the lightsaber cauterized the wound. No, I understand, but I'm just saying it's a bloodless, and all of a sudden he's just got an empty sleeve. Ah, yeah, I get it. Great moment in film history. I get it. Dark? Come on, dark? I mean, it's dark-ish, but again, nothing you can't easily and comfortably play on network television. You know, nothing you couldn't easily, like I would say, you know, you just go to the Marvel films again. Let's just look at Thor. Thor having his eye gouged out was darker. Thor having his entire homeworld destroyed is akin to, you know, them destroying the planet in the first Star Wars. You know, yes, but unlike in Star Wars, where we never saw the world, in Thor, we got to spend several movies on that world, seeing the culture of Asgard, seeing the people of Asgard, all that kind of stuff, and then seeing that destroyed. That's darker. But again, it's all a matter of relative speaking, because everything you just mentioned has been equaled or exceeded in some of the Disney level Star Wars stuff as far as dark material goes. Again, nothing ever done in Star Wars in the first 6 movies comes close to being as dark and as bleak as the ending of Rogue One, where every hero dies. They all die. Every single one of them die. Some brutally, and some depressingly, the 2 main heroes just holding each other on the riverfront, on the shore of the ocean, and just sitting there helplessly as this pseudo-nuclear blast comes and evaporates them into dust. Watching the other ones either blown up by hand grenades or shot to death as we watch them die. I'm just sorry. Nothing in the original 6 Star Wars movies, and remember, the original 3 are the greatest films of all time, but nothing in that, in terms of darkness, comes close to that. That's by far darker. Gruesome, Anakin burning at Mustafar, that's a pretty good argument to make for gruesome, but again, nothing in the original series, which is my all-time favorite, comes close to not being okay to just show on regular broadcast television to all ages. It is what it is. It is what it is. All right, anyway. Koba writes, will Lucasfilm ever reveal Rey's grandmother, like who had a child with Palpatine? Probably not. Probably not. And there's really no point in doing it at this point. And it could have been just some, you be pregnant at dark side. I mean, it could have been something like that. I mean, I don't know. But I'm going to guess probably Koba, they'll never go there, nor do they need to. It's not important. It's not important to the story. We don't need to know. I mean, it would be an interesting little factoid for them to throw in some book sometime. But as far as our understanding of the movie and how it went, and it's not a very good movie, but in terms of how we understand the movie and come to grips with the narrative of the movie, it's really an unimportant fact. The important fact was he was her grandfather, which totally retconned everything J.J. Abrams did in the first movie, but whatever. But that's the important, germane part of the argument. And not so much the grandmother, I don't think. All right. Undead Sick writes, wouldn't it be awesome if it was ultimately revealed that Gideon actually wanted to extract the materials from Baby Yoda, which I still believe are midichlorians, sorry, Kenan, in order to heal a still hooked up machine weakened Palpatine? Somebody else brought that up before. And while I don't think that's where they're going, it at least would absolutely be consistent with what they've been setting up here. Now, there's some big unanswered questions still, like at what point did these dark metalheads, Sith dudes at the concert bowl in Revenge of the Sith, all there with their black hoods on, at what point did they retrieve Palpatine? At what point did they get him put into a clone body that couldn't hold up to the power of Palpatine and all this kind of stupid stuff they tried to do? When did they do it? Did they do it that early on? Because remember, the events of Mandalorian don't happen all that long after the events of Return of the Jedi. It's just a couple of years after the events of the Return of the Jedi. So that all depends. But if they did that, yeah. If Palpatine's just like, I need midichlorians. Okay. Then they go and try to get that. I personally don't think you're ever going to see Star Wars acknowledge midichlorians again, but they could. And that kind of premise you just set up there would fit. I mean, it would fit. I still don't think that is what they're doing, but it passes a couple of important tests. Number one, it would be really interesting. So that's the first test. Would it at least be an interesting plot development? And yes, I think that would be an interesting plot development. But the second important test that your kind of construct there passes is that it needs to fit within the narrative as we understand it. And that totally does. So it would be both interesting and it would fit within the narrative. Now, again, I still don't think that's what they're doing, but it would fit and it would be interesting. So let's see where they're going with that. Let's see. But by the way, it has to assume... like lots of races have Force users. Does that mean everybody of Yoda's race is a Force user? Like we know the child is, we know Yoda is, we know Yaddle is. Those are the only 3 members of that species we've ever seen. Are they saying that every member of Yoda's species is inherently Force sensitive? Because we know that's not the case with humans. There are human Jedi, but that doesn't mean all humans are Force sensitive. Maybe Yoda's race is that. It raises a lot of questions. It raises a lot of interesting questions. But let's see where they go with season 2. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, reminder, Buddy versus Duff Star Wars cake baking competition tonight on Food Network. You know what's funny? Ann and I finally saw a commercial for it. And Ann was totally in. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't even know this was happening. I'm like, yeah, actually somebody wrote in to my show the other day and actually told us about this. So I think I may not watch it tonight because Ann and I, we've got our Dungeons and Dragons group tonight. So Ann and I are playing D&D tonight over Zoom. So we're not having people over to the house, but we're doing it over Zoom. We use an app called Roll20. for the maps and the dice rolling and all that kind of stuff. It's really, really great, as a matter of fact. I love it. But so we're playing D&D tonight, so I'll probably try to get caught up on that tomorrow. But I am looking forward to watch that. Thank you for the reminder of that, anonymous viewer. I appreciate that. All right, Secular Monk writes, name the movie, John. That's the longest list I've ever had. Apostasy, abusive language, heresy, revengingness, eating blood. Do you think I've ever written down eating blood before? Where am I? I don't know. You know, sometimes people give me a quote and I go, oh, I know this one, but I can't quite, I don't even recognize. It's the movies I've seen the most that are ones I don't even recognize. Actually, you know what? Now it's going to kill me if I don't look it up. So let me at least look it up here. Do you ever think I've ever written down eating blood? Let me see if I can pull up the quote here. What's it from? It says it's from a book. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't even, it's the one's not even sounding familiar to me. This one's not even sounding familiar to me. So I don't know, Secular Monk. If you guys know in the comments section, please write it in the comments section. All right, Chris Hunt writes, was the towel at the end of Man of Steel also CGI? What towel? Because, I mean, there's obviously, it's a reference to the cape in Man of Steel is CGI. They CGI'd Superman's cape, which was actually a really good move. I questioned that when I first heard they were doing that, but then when you see it in the movie, it was really the right choice. It did really work, but I'm not sure I can quite remember what towel we're talking about, Chris. All right, Undead Sick writes, also, yes, all the heroes and main characters die, and Darth Vader slaughters 30 rebels, but then we end with a hopeful and happy ever after ending with CGI Leia being the savior of the galaxy. So again, ending a dark movie with hope and joy. Irrelevant. That movie had to end because it leads into the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope. Like, we knew how it ended. The question isn't about how does it end. The question is, how do we get there? Empire Strikes Back ends with hope. Empire Strikes Back ends with Luke and Leia getting away, Luke getting his hand all fixed up. The Rebel Alliance has survived the attack of the Empire on Hoth. They're all back together again. They know where Han is. They've got a plan to go and get him back. Everything ends big and hopeful. Yeah, they got their asses kicked earlier, but it ends big and hopeful. Does that mean that any of the heavier stuff in Empire Strikes Back doesn't count? Of course it counts. Yes, they end off in a place of, hey, we took some licks, but we got away. The Rebel Alliance lives. My hand's all fixed up. We know where Han is. We've got a plan to go and rescue him. Yay! Right? That doesn't take away from any of the heavier elements of Empire Strikes Back any more than Leia getting away, saying, I've got the plans. Takes away the heavy elements of, yeah, watching Vader slaughter 30 whatever men, watching all the heroes in the movie die, watching the Death Star coming to nightmarish reality and destroying worlds. Yeah, them having an ending of the princess going, we've got hope. That doesn't take any of the heavy stuff away any more than the hopeful ending of Empire Strikes Back takes away from the heavy stuff in Empire Strikes Back. That is what I would say to that, at any rate. I'm sure there's a good debate to be had there, but that's kind of my initial point of view on that. Carnell B writes, in Disney's attempt to one-up Sony's spunk, the MCU will now be known as the Cinematic Universe of Marvel. I don't know why I didn't think about that before. I won't say it out loud, but you guys can put it together, right? Cinematic Universe of Marvel. There you go. You know what, Carnell? I got to steal that and tweet that out because that's funny. That's funny. I like that. Yeah. When's the next movie of Come? I mean, well done. Well done. I give you the drum hit for that one. I give you the honorary drum hit for that one. That one's good. The cinematic universe of Marvel. I dig it. All right, Ben Rayner writes, pick one to live and one to vacation on. 2 weeks. Harry Potter universe or Star Wars universe. You get all powers and force with all knowledge of how to use it. Ooh. One to live in and one to vacation in. I'm too much into technology. I live in the Star Wars universe and visit the Harry Potter universe. There's just too much being set back in the era of the Harry Potter world. I like, Star Wars. Live in the Star Wars universe, visit the Harry Potter universe. But hey, listen, you had to make me think there for a second. Because there's some, being a full-fledged wizard in the Harry Potter universe, that would be kind of cool. But not being able to use it amongst the muggles, that would be also difficult. I'm going to go Star Wars. I live in the Star Wars. I visit the Harry Potter one. That's a tough choice, Ben. All right, Wave Wonder 1 writes, check out the new instant action in Battlefront 2. Allows you to play the multiplayer experience in an offline single-player format. Play and chat. Ooh, you know what? I haven't loaded up Star Wars. I got the icon. I'm looking at it right here on my screen. I haven't loaded that one up in a bit. Actually, do I have... Let me see if I can do this. I'm not sure that I can. I'm thinking I can't. Oh, maybe I can. Let me see if I can load this up here. This is total waste of time. There's no reason in the world I should be doing this right now. Total waste of time. But let me see if I can do it anyway. Let's see here. Am I getting it? Ooh, I'm getting it. Okay. So here, of course, is my my setup. Hello, everybody. So here's, of course, my setup. There's Henry Cavill Superman overlooking and protecting me as I do my show. Thank you, Henry Cavill Superman. All right, so got this here. But if we go in here, yeah, see, I got Battlefront 2. It's hard to see that, but I got Battlefront 2 right there. But I haven't loaded it up in a while. Actually, I haven't loaded it up in a while. That I did not know about this new development. Allows you to play the multiplayer experience in an offline single-player format. I'll tell you what, Wave Runner. I know what I'm doing tonight before I play Dungeons and Dragons. I think I'm going to load that up and give that and check that out. That actually sounds pretty cool. Thank you for putting that on my radar. I appreciate that, man. I'm going to check that out. Let me see how well I enjoy it before I decide. The hard thing about doing any kind of a shooter as a play-in chat, like when I'm playing, like, say, Animal Crossing play-in chat, it's so chill and laid back that I can easily play and answer questions at the same time, right? When I'm playing poker, because you're constantly doing something, right? But I don't know. Let me try it out and see it. And if it works out for me, maybe I will. Maybe I will. Again, thank you, Wave Wonder, for putting that on my radar. Donaldo Martinez writes, I'm a sucker for movie with dogs. Yeah, my wife is too. So my question is, have you seen the Disney movie called The Ugly Dachshund? Ooh, no, I have never heard of that one. That one is my wife's favorite. Obviously, we have Lily and Shadow. Dachshunds are my wife's favorite breed. She literally, I'm not lying, if we're driving down the street and she sees somebody walking a dachshund, a doxy, she'll get tears in her eyes. She gets emotional just seeing those dogs. It's crazy. So no, I have not heard of this. I have not heard of this. So we'll have to probably check it out. I will probably have to check it out at some point, but I've never even heard of it. So thank you for putting that on my radar. All right, almost out of time here, guys. Baylor Girl writes, let's see. Baylor Girl writes, hey, John, you discussed Anne Hathaway Sunday. I love Anne Hathaway in almost everything. Ella Enchanted was one of my favorites. It was the first time I realized she could sing. Somebody to Love was a pleasant surprise. You know what? Yes. And of course, she had her Princess Diaries stuff and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't until later that we realized, oh my gosh, she's not just this Disney princess kind of girl. She's great. And Ella Enchanted is actually a sweet little film. It's actually a sweet little film. I dig that. So yeah, I'm with you. She's ever since the oldest stuff that she did was really, really good. Oh my gosh, we're approaching 3 hours here. Okay, Ryan Wicks writes, Andy Signore posting dumb videos of you. I'm not surprised. I mean, look, again, I'm not surprised. Andy Signore has some kind of weird fixation on me, which I don't understand. But look, the end of the day is this. Andy Signore is, in every meaning of the word, is irrelevant. Andy Signore is a completely irrelevant dude. He has no relevance whatsoever. and why he has some kind of fixation on me. Like, he's constantly trying to tweet at me, and he's like a 5-year-old child in a corner desperately trying to get my attention for some reason, which I don't understand, and fine. The bottom line is he's simply too irrelevant for me to worry about or to even think about. And the irony of that is that while he's sitting like some petulant child in a corner screaming and crying, like trying to get my attention, it's like, dude, I'm almost as big of a nobody as you are. I'm a fucking nobody. I'm just some dude just with a couple of people who watch me and we like talking about movies on my channel and blah, blah, blah. I am a nobody, but he seems to have this really weird fixation on me. It's almost like some creepy stalker in high school or something. I don't know. He's got some weird fixation on me. I don't understand it. I don't bring him up. I don't care about him. Like I said, he's completely irrelevant. Just slightly, ever so slightly more irrelevant than me. And look, the bottom line is this. I don't care. I don't care. Let him do whatever it is he wants to do. Just let him do whatever he wants to do. He is not important enough to me for me to talk about. Clearly, for some reason, he thinks I'm important enough that he needs to talk about. So be it. Go do your thing, whatever your thing is. Go do it. But he's not important or relevant enough for me to talk about. I am apparently important enough for him to talk about, which I have no idea why he thinks that way. But whatever. I don't care. So let's move on. I only address it because you asked me, you sent in a super chat, so I address it, but I just leave it at that. All right. Let's see. Where'd we go? I know there was somebody before Jonah. There it is. Ben Rayner writes, John, the Sith dudes in 9 are Death Eaters from Harry Potter. Yes! Actually, I never even thought of it in those terms. I've never even thought of it in those terms. They are basically Death Eaters from Harry Potter. That is exactly what it is. I never even thought of it in those terms. I've never even thought of it in those terms. But you're absolutely right. That's basically what they were. They were basically Death Eaters. Or Dementors. They're really more like Dementors, really. Just only sitting in their rock concert seats. Anyway, Jonah writes, John, you mentioned these films once again the other day, Catwoman, Battlefield Earth, and Highlander 2. I have never seen these movies, but the more you talk about them, the more I want to see them. You know what? In a very morbid kind of way. In a very morbid kind of way. I would suggest you should watch them in all the most, because I believe they are the 3 worst all-time Hollywood-produced, wide-released movies ever. Now, you'll definitely find some non-wide release movies or some like little indie films that are worse than these films, probably. But in terms of wide-release Hollywood-produced movies, you will never find 3 worse movies, at least in my estimation, than these. And if for no other reason but a very morbid reason, you should probably check them out. You should probably check them out just to say that you saw them. And if you do, Jonah, please let me know what you think about them. Anyway, Secular Monk writes, the movie is The Little Hours, a lovely movie starring Alison Brie, Kate McCuckoo, and Aubrey Plaza, among others. Very funny film. Why? Wait a minute. Is this the comedy? Like the raunchy comedy where she's like, Aubrey Plaza like plays like a nun or something? Hold a second. Because if it is, I can't believe I forgot about it. Just let me look it up here. It is! Okay, so yes. So I do. Yeah, that quote completely went over my head. Sorry. The quote completely went over my head on that one. I'll say this about the movie. It has its moments. It has its moments. Dave Franco is also in that movie. John C. Reilly, Miley Shannon, Fred Armisen, Nick Offerman is in it. It's a movie that has its moments. I will give it that. It's a movie that's got its moments that certainly make you laugh. Overall, not a movie I ever recommended to anybody. It's a little too little of the high moments, but it does have a couple of high moments. Yeah. As soon as you mentioned the one she did with Alison Brie, I'm like, wait, is that the one with the nuns? I had totally forgotten even the name of the movie. I had totally forgotten the name of that movie. Anyway, okay, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Open Mic Show. Thank you so much for being here, guys. It's always awesome that you guys plan to spend a couple of hours here. We went 3 hours today. that you guys would spend some of your precious weekend time hanging out here with us. And guys, special thank you to all of you, the many of you who sent in questions for two reasons. Number one, you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel while you were sending in those questions. And all of us here on the John Campea YouTube channel, myself, Robert Meyer Burnett, Aaron, Chris, who will be back, fact checker Jonathan Ray, and everybody else here, all of us very deeply thank you guys for supporting the channel on that level. May you guys have a wonderful weekend ahead of yourselves. May you be relaxed and enjoy for whatever is left of it, of course. You got a big day coming up tomorrow, so I hope you guys all do well. That will do it for me for now, guys. Don't forget, Robert Meyer Burnett and I will return on the John Campea Show tomorrow. Make sure you come and join us for that. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.